IB Nation, welcome back to another edition of the Irish Breakdown Podcast. It's Wednesday, and that means the introduction of a new segment that we're going to be doing at Irish Breakdown, and that is going to be every Wednesday as part of our show. We are going to do a buy, sell, or hold segment. However, with this being the first buy, sell, hold segment, we had so many great questions from IB members that I went ahead and made the whole show is going to be about buy, sell, or hold. There were just so many great questions. Buy, sell, or hold is, for now, the plan is to have it only be questions that are on the message board from premium members. It's just a little perk that we want to give to the people that are premium members and support us. If you're in the chat and you're not a premium member, you're missing out. But I will answer super chats if you have a buy, sell, or hold that you really want to get in, and you're either a member that didn't get a chance to get it in early, or if you're someone who's not a member but you want to have a buy, sell, or hold question asked, go ahead and throw a super chat and we'll respond to that. But otherwise, we are going to have a full day of buy, sell, or hold. And then that's just not the only perk that you get for being a member at Irish Breakdown. There's lots of perks, including some breakdowns that I did recently. I had a breakdown of the Notre Dame offensive line. You can find that at boards.irishbreakdown.com. I have the blue offensive line already done. I graded the gold offensive line today, finished it today, and then I'm going to have that article up later tonight on the message board only. Here's just a little taste of that. As you can see here, I went through and broke down every single play of the blue gold game. I went, plus, minuses, double pluses, graded them total, run, pass, and then as you can see here, you can see my write-up on Emil Wagner and Billy Schrouth and how they graded in the game and things I liked about how both of those guys did. And so those are just a taste of what you're going to get. For those who are on the board, they'll tell you there's some breakdowns of Mike Denbrock's offense. I've done 4 so far. I have plenty more coming. Going to do some things over the summer about Al Golden's defense. They are all 22 breakdowns, live film, graphics, explanations, all of it. Some really, really cool stuff, I think, on there. I think it's cool because I had fun doing it, and I hope that you guys had fun watching it. But we're going to have a lot more of that stuff, just some of the many, 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 I think, really cool things that we have on the Irish Breakdown premium board, and it's for premium members only, so you're definitely going to want to check that out. So I'm ready to get into today's buy, sell, or hold. We had, like I said, we had a lot of great questions. I was surprised how many questions there were, and when I first saw them, I was kind of like, okay, there's going to be a lot of ones that I can kind of pass over and not do, and probably a lot of double questions and things like that. And there was really just so many good questions. I was like, yeah, we're going to have to turn the whole show into that. So we're going to kind of rock and roll here today with just a whole buy, sell, or hold segment. Just a quick reminder, tonight, IB Nation Sports Talk will go live at 6 o'clock. Tomorrow, Ryan and I are going to get together for a show. It's going to be several segments, but one segment for sure that we're going to do is we're going to preview the NFL draft for tomorrow. We'll talk about Notre Dame guys, and we'll just also talk about the first round, which is tomorrow night as well. So you're definitely going to want to check that out. It's going to be a fun conversation. I'm looking to, kind of getting Ryan's thoughts and then sharing some of mine as well about what, what we're going to see and what how Notre Dame's going to be impacted, but just everything else. It's going to be interesting. I could see it being a day where there's a ton of movement, and I could see it being a day where maybe there's not as much movement as people think because of the fact that there are teams that are, really have needs at certain positions, but then it's also at other positions not a great draft. So it could be a draft where a lot of people are trying to trade down, but there may not be a lot of trade down partners unless it's somebody looking for a quarterback or an offensive tackle or a wide receiver. So it's going to be a very, very interesting night, and it doesn't always go how people think it's going to go. So I'm curious to see how that one's going to go. But with that being said, let's dive into and start rocking and rolling with this buy, sell, hold. Now, if you remember last time we did this, and we did this once before, it went great. You guys loved it. I enjoyed it, but we just kind of read the questions out. So I'm going to do a little bit different this time, because a lot of people said it was harder to really follow it because they couldn't see what was being said. They wanted to be able to read it. So we did this. We're going to have some cards, so you guys are going to be able to see just the different questions and who put those questions out and those type of things. So let's get started. My man Rhino1134 started things off, and he says, buy, sell, or hold. Notre Dame will have 2 running backs that go over 800 yards from scrimmage, with each having at least 8 TDs, rushing and receiving combined for the 2024 season. I'm going to definitely buy that, Rhino. I think that's a pretty, for me, that's a pretty easy set, like buy for me. Barring injury, I have zero doubt that you're going to have 2 running backs go for over 800 yards from scrimmage. I mean, 2 years ago, Notre Dame had 2 running backs go for over 800 yards rushing, just rushing alone. And I believe I'm going to have to go back and look that up, because I believe Logan Diggs and Audric Estime both went over 1,000 yards of all-purpose yards that year. So, but I don't want to say that for sure, because then I will look silly if it's incorrect. But I just want to quickly pull this up real quick. So let's go. It would be all-purpose, right? So you had, all right, rushing and receiving. You had Audric Estime had 1,084. Yes, Logan Diggs had 1,033. And then Chris Tyree, who's another running back, had 836. Now, this team, I think, is going to throw a lot more than that team in 2022. This team is also going to have a quarterback that's going to take a lot more of the yards than you had in 2022 from a rushing standpoint. But I also think the yards per touch are going to be way higher with this 2-man group this season. So I'm definitely buying the notion of Jeremiah Love and Jadarian Price both going over. Now, here's the interesting thing, Rhino. What if one of them gets hurt early? And this is I asked myself as I was looking through your question, because I tried not to dwell on the questions too much, because I want there to be some natural reaction to it, but it's kind of hard as I'm copying and pasting the questions into the graphic to not. And if you're listening via podcast platform, all these graphics are now on the screen. So if you want to kind of see them, you can pull that the YouTube or the Rumble chat up or show up, and you'll be able to see it. But what if one of them gets hurt early? What if Price goes down or Love goes down early? I would be a little bit more hesitant to take the buy, but I'd probably still take the buy if it happens early. If it's a middle of the season injury, it'll be a lot harder for a second guy to get over that 800-yard mark. But let's just say either Jabron Payne or Keedron Young or Aeneas Williams ends up being the number 2 back because of an injury for a big chunk of the season. Let's say 9 or more games. I'm still confident that that guy will get about 800 yards. I think it'll be a little bit more of a gap between 1 and 2, whereas right now, I think it's going to be sort of a pretty even total yards type of thing. So, so with your question, definitely buy. Even if there's an injury early, I could still see it being a buy for the kind of the way that I look at it. So very, very good question to start us off with right now. I like that one. We have some more along those same lines. MM Irish. Coach Golden and Coach Denbrock will stay at Notre Dame the next 4 years and complete their contracts. That is okay. I'm going to sell that. And the reason I'm going to sell that, I'm not happy about selling that because I really like this duo, but I'm going to sell that because if Notre Dame is the team that I think they're going to be, and I have some questions coming up here over the next 10 to 12 questions that are going to kind of be big picture about the team and Marcus Freeman. If this team is as good as I think they're going to be, I just don't see how one, if not both of those guys, don't get head coaching offers. Now, I don't know that either one of them definitely want to be head coaches again, or in Mike Denbrock's case, at all. He's never been a head coach. Al Golden has. I could see a scenario where the right job comes along for both of them to take that. I'm more prone to leaning towards Golden. I'm less. I think there's less of a chance that Denbrock leaves, but because the question was with both of them, I have a hard time seeing Al Golden staying for the next 4 years, just because I think he's going to be pretty coveted. I just think if Notre Dame's as good as I think they're going to be, he's going to get a lot of NFL D coordinator offers and a lot of NFL head coaching offers if Notre Dame's as good of a program as I think they're going to be. So I just, both of them staying the next 4 years, I'm going to sell that. And I'll say this is one of those ones where I do kind of hope I'm wrong, to be honest with you. Next one. You have a buy, sell, or hold for my man DMND13. Notre Dame will have a top 10 defense and a top 10 offense next year, however you want to measure points per game, total offense, defense, efficiency, etc. That is a very good one, DMND. Now, here's the thing. I'm going to look at it from this standpoint. I'm going to buy. Just flat out, I'm just going to come out and say it first. I'm going to buy, because the reality is Notre Dame had a top 10 team last year in most of the categories that I care about. I'm not someone who cares as much about total offense. I don't, because I think there's circumstances that could kind of get into, your overall production that could impact, your yardage. And I've used this example before from a year that I was coaching. When I was at Muhlenberg back in 2002, we averaged about 40 points per game. We were over 40 until we made it to the second round of the national playoff. We only scored 10 points against John Carroll, and that dropped us under 40. But that year, we only averaged around 350 yards per game. That's it, because our average starting field position was about the 48-yard line. I mean, we had 3 or 4 at least special teams touchdowns. We had a couple defensive touchdowns, and then, of course, we had great defense, and we blocked a lot of kicks, and our defense forced a lot of turnovers, and that allowed us to, to be in situations where we didn't have to go but 50 yards to get touchdowns. So I certainly see that. I think that last year Notre Dame had a top 10 in both of these categories. I have no reason to believe that they won't be top 10 this year. Last year, Notre Dame ranked in the top 10 in scoring offense and scoring defense. Last year, Notre Dame ranked in the top 10 in defensive efficiency and offensive efficiency, according to the FEI. And last year, Notre Dame ranked in the top 10 in yards per play on offense. They ranked, where was it? It was 9th. Yes, they ranked 9th in yards per play, and they ranked 5th in yards per play on defense. I think the more difficult question would have been, will they have top 5 in both? I think that's the standard. Top 10, I'm confident in points, efficiency, numbers, as far as like statistical efficiency, yards per play, and then also in overall efficiency from like the FEI and some different things. I think they'll be top 10 in all of those. So, yes, I do see that. The question, however, is will they play like that in the big games? That's the big question. Will their overall numbers at the end of the year be really good? Yeah, because they're gonna destroy some teams, just like last year. They're gonna just steamroll about half the roster or half the schedule, if not more. But can they play that way against A&M and Louisville and Florida State and USC, who I think is going to be improved on defense? Those are going to be the bigger questions for me. Next, from Irish Coffee. Now, Irish Coffee had 3 in a row. So I'm gonna knock these off and go 3 in a row, get these together. So these are some ones that will go rapid fire. Buy, sell, or hold. Notre Dame will have 3 scholarship quarterbacks on the roster, and I assume that means by the fall. Definitely a buy for me. I do not see 2 players transferring. I don't think it's a given that 1 player transfers, but I think there's another buy, sell, or hold about that one later. But I'm going to say definitely buy on those 3. Notre Dame's offensive line will be a Joe Moore Award finalist. That means final 3. I'm going buy on that one. And here's why I'm going buy on that one. Having broken down the blue gold game, there were some things I saw that I really liked from the O-line. Now, keep in mind, the starting offensive line didn't play together. Billy Schrouth was not on the same side of the ball as Ashton Craig or Charles Jagasaw. Maybe Tosh Baker starts at right tackle. Maybe it's Emil Wagner. Maybe Rocco Spindler starts at guard. The point is they weren't there together. And so that factored into it, number 1. Number 2, this is a Notre Dame football team or Notre Dame offensive line that is going against a really good defensive line. I mean, you talk about even on the edge, which is not even the strength of the line. It's still Josh Burnham, who had a really good game. RJ Oben. It's Jordan Patelho, Boubacar Traore. It's Bryce Young. It's a very talented group of edges. And you're battling that. Then, of course, on the inside, it's Howard Cross, it's Riley Mills, it's Jason Onye, it's Donovan Heinisch. And then you got talented young guys like Devin Houston and Brennan Vernon, who I thought did some really good things in the game. So you're being tested by a very good group. And there's still a work in progress, because I'm I think where I'm a little different than some folks, that I engage with on the podcast and engage with, and I mean, like in the chat and then on the message board, is my expectations were such going into the blue gold game and really just going into the spring that I actually think that the offensive line's further along than I thought it was going to be. And so that's an encouragement for me. I think once you get everybody together and you've got Charles Jagasol's locked in, you've got your left guard position figured out, you've got your center positions locked in, your right guard's positions locked in, you figure out the right guard position, you're going to have a really, really tough game in the opener. It's a really, really tough game. After that, you've got 3 or 4 weeks of, okay, let's get ourselves right. Looking at it from the O-line standpoint, let's get ourselves right. We've got some games where we can kind of get on the same page, have some success. And you got a big game against Louisville coming up. They're going to have a pretty good D-line, although they just suffered a blow when Tyler Barron jumped back into the portal, which don't even get me started on that. Guys transferring to a team in January and then leaving again in April just disgusts me. But that's a different conversation for a different day. So I think that's going to factor into it. But the other thing is I think the numbers this year are going to be really good. I mean, LSU was their offensive line, I think was at least a semifinalist, if not a finalist. Let me look that up real quick because let me see this real quick. 2003 Joe Moore Award finalists. I'm just going to look this up real quick and try to remind myself who the finalists were this year. But I remember LSU was at least a semifinalist. And I'm watching that, and I'm like, I'm breaking down that team. And, yeah, LSU was a finalist with Georgia, Oregon, and Washington. And I'm saying to myself, I watched that LSU offensive line. They were not one of the 5 best offensive lines of college football last year. They were good. Don't get me wrong. They were good. You don't score the kind of points they score if your offensive line's a weakness. Will Campbell's pretty good at left tackle. Their guards were solid. Their center's solid. The right tackle had some pretty good moments. But overall, it was not an elite offensive line by any stretch of imagination. But the numbers were elite. And so that got them some props. Now, I know that the Joe Moore Award people, they talk about we break down film and all that, and I understand all that. I just thought last year's rankings were a little shaky for me. I usually like what they do. Last year's were a little shaky for me. So I do think this offensive line is going to be part of an offense that's going to have outstanding numbers. As we said, top 10 team in scoring, top 10 team in yards, top 10 team in, or not yards per play, top 10 team in efficiency. And I think the film's going to be really impressive because there's a lot of talent. And it may not look like that early in September, I think, but by the middle to end of the year, I do believe that Joe Rudolph's going to have this offensive line playing at a very high level. And then on the last one, Riley Leonard will be a Heisman finalist. I'm going to sell that one just because it's possible. He's got the talent to do it. He's going to be playing on a really good Notre Dame football team. But I just don't know that he's going to be able to put up the numbers that are going to result in him being a finalist. There's a lot of, the ball's going to get spread around a lot. Notre Dame's loaded at running back. They're a team that's going to run the ball quite a bit. I don't know that Riley Leonard's going to be able to put up the big time 4,000 passing yards, 30+ touchdowns, passing, and all that type of stuff to really have that type of production. So it's possible, but I need to see it. And then also I just need to see that Riley Leonard's going to be healthy for a full season. I expect him to, and I hope he will. But when you've had multiple surgeries on one part of your body in an off season, it would be irresponsible of me to not at least have some pause about whether or not that guy's going to be able to get to a 12-game season holding up. I hope so. No one's told me he won't. It's just kind of, okay, I need to see it. But if he's healthy and yeah, he'll at least be a top 5 to 7 guy. That's my prediction is I think Riley Leonard, if he's healthy and he's the player he was in 2022, he'll be top 5 to 6, 5 to 7, kind of like where Jalen Milroe was last year. Will he be top 3 or 4 and get invited? That I'm a little bit more skeptical on. That I'm not quite as positive that that's going to be the case. But we'll see. I hope that this is another one that I'm wrong on as we move forward. Let's get to some more questions. We got some of these smaller questions, or they were quicker questions. I kind of combined them together. We got a buy, sell, or hold from my guy Kenny Moore. Kenny's buy, sell, or hold is left tackle is the best position for Charles Jagasaw. I believe it's the left best position for Charles Jagasol when you look at the makeup of the current football team. And I'm gonna just leave it at there for now because there's another question later or another buy, sell, or hold proposition to me later that kind of addresses a little bit more into this. So for now, I'm gonna buy it for now. Well, I'm gonna buy it, but I'll explain later. Uh, Padrig, some of these guys, these names, I'm gonna probably get wrong, but I'm just gonna kind of how they are in my head when I read these people names. His buy, sell, or hold is 2 quarterbacks portal prior to the first game. I'm gonna sell that. I do not see 2 quarterbacks leaving. I could see 1 quarterback leaving, and I think we all know which couple it might be. But I only see 1 of those guys leaving. I don't see 2 quarterbacks leaving via the portal. We have a couple here from Bayside Tiger. So the first one, buy, sell, or hold. Al Golden is more focused on being at Notre Dame versus the next job and will emphasize a practical defense around its talent instead of showing off his X's and O's smarts. I'm gonna sell this because I don't necessarily agree with the premise of why Al Golden is going to do this. I mean, look, Al Golden ran a very complex defense last season, and I don't think he ran that defense to show off to NFL teams. I thought that was more, I felt that in 2022. I don't feel that way in 2023 because we saw him tailor it more to the strengths of his players. I think we're going to see Al Golden emphasize a practical defense around its talent. I think he's going to do that, but with still in the same philosophy that he's always had. It's going to be aggressive. They're going to pressure. They're going to mix up their coverage looks. They're going to mix up their pre-snap looks. They're going to mix up their post-snap looks on all 3 levels. And it's going to be designed to create a lot of negatives and a lot of problems for the offense. I don't think that's going to change. Do I think that you could see them maybe make some more mistakes this year than last year? I do. But I also think they're going to make a lot more plays. And if anything, I think that if you think about the talent that he's going to have and the athleticism he's going to have on the edge and a linebacker, you could make a case that from an aggressiveness standpoint, there's merit to being more aggressive this year and not asking your young linebackers to read and react more. Well, if you're going to do that, then you need to have even, more variety to your pressure packages. So I think he's absolutely going to build around his talent. I don't think there's any doubt in my mind that he's going to do that. I think the question is more, does he have the right fit or the right idea for what his players can do? Is he going to put too much volume on them for younger guys? I don't think that's as much about trying to show off for the next job as it is just a philosophy that he has of complexity and doing a lot. So I'm going to sell that because I don't agree with the premise, but I do believe we're going to see him try to build around the talent that he has. There's no doubt in my mind. Next one, buy, sell, or hold. Over, under. I guess this is kind of an over, under. Cheating a little bit instead of a buy, sell, or hold. But over, under 1.5 games, the defense alone outscores an opponent. Well, they did that twice last year, right? So they did that against Tennessee State, and they did that against Pitt. So I'm gonna buy that. Yeah, I'm gonna buy that because I think this defense is gonna be pretty good. I think there's gonna be some games where they have a pick 6 and then the other team only scores 3 points or 6 points. Yeah, I could see that. And then in the premise, I'm assuming Bayside Tiger that we're talking about the defense directly scoring points. So not picking it off and running it back to the 2, but picking it off and actually scoring. So I'm going to buy that. I could see that. And they've done that. I mean, there's been a couple times they've done that. And they did that in 2021, I believe. Let me look up the sketch because I know they outscored Georgia Tech in 2021. Let me just pull up the defense, the schedule from 2021 and just try to refresh my memory a little bit. So I know that the defense that season, they also did it to Wisconsin. That's right. I think they did it to Wisconsin. Didn't they have 2 pick 6s against Wisconsin that year? Let me look that up real quick. So the Notre Dame Wisconsin game. So I know that Notre Dame's defense and special teams outscored Wisconsin because you had a kick return and then Jack Kaiser's fumble. But or interception return, but I felt like they had, yes, Drew White. That's correct. Drew White also had an interception return that game. So Notre Dame's defense outscored Wisconsin 14-13 that year. And then they also outscored Georgia Tech. I believe it was Georgia Tech. That's a game where Jack Kaiser also had a touchdown in that game. And they outscored the offense in that regard. So yes, or it was a Navy. No, it might have happened 3 times that year now that I think about it. Give me a second to look this up, but I actually think the defense in 2021 outscored 3 opponents. So we know that they outscored Wisconsin. We know that they outscored Georgia Tech. Let me look up 2 other games here real quick and look at the box scores. So against Navy, they did not score a defensive touchdown against Navy. So let's go to Georgia Tech. You had Myron Tungvaloa's fumble return and then Jack Kaiser's. Okay, so that was 2. So in my head, I had kind of convinced myself that that Myron Tungvaloa's fumble return might have been against Navy. So they were both in the same game. So they did it twice as well in 2021. So since they've done it 2 of the last 3 years, I'm going to take the bye and say that they go over 1.5 games next season where the defense outscores the other team, completely outscores the other team. I like that one. That's an outside the box one. I really like that one, Bayside Tiger. Good job on that. All right, Hayden 3178. Buy, sell, or hold. 2 different tight ends lead in a team offensive category. I'm definitely selling that. I could see one tight end leading in something, touchdowns, catches, receptions, but I don't see 2. And I think there's a much better chance that a tight end doesn't lead them in any categories in passing this year, receiving this year. So I'm going to go with sell. I'm definitely selling that one. Seth Clark, buy, sell, or hold. Jaden Osbury will be the most impactful out of all the linebackers this season. That is a good one. Most impactful. Because in my head, I'm going to say that a lot today, I think. I'm going to try not to say that a lot today. But it's just trying to give you guys some context of where my head is when I'm thinking about this. So, like, I think about Jack Kaiser in 2021 and how much he played in 2021 and how impactful he was in 2021, even though he didn't lead the team in tackles or tackles for loss. I'm thinking about the pick 6 against Wisconsin. I'm thinking about the pick 6 against Georgia Tech. I'm thinking about some other big plays he made. So I could see a scenario where that is true. But I'm also then looking at it saying, will Jaden Osbury play enough to truly be the most impactful of all the linebackers? That I'm uncertain of, and that's why ultimately I'm going to sell. So I think the fact of just like Jack Kaiser last year, Jack Kaiser on a per snap basis was more impactful than Maris Leofau or JD Bertrand. He just didn't play as much. And so yes, I did. I copied and pasted that one, and so it was obviously misspelled, and that's my fault, Seth. I should have seen that and corrected that. So thank you for pointing that out, Brian. But yes, I do. I'm going to sell it just because I don't know that he's going to play enough. Like I don't see him playing nearly as many snaps as Drake Bowen, for example, or Jack Kaiser, for example. So I'm going to sell that one. But yeah, I think Jaden Osbury is going to be impactful this season. There's no doubt. I just don't know that he's going to play enough to be the most impactful for all of them. Irish Okie, the buy, sell, or hold. The Notre Dame O-line versus the Texas A&M D-line is the most important matchup for the opening game. I'm going to sell that, actually. And here's why I'm going to sell that. I could see Notre Dame being in a scenario where the offensive line doesn't play well and they're still able to have some success offensively because of the fact that A&M is going to be playing an offensive line or an offensive system that they are somewhat familiar with because the players played against Mike Denbrock, but the coaches didn't coach against Mike Denbrock last season. And I'm going to look at it from the standpoint of the Notre Dame's ability to get the ball in space with Jeremiah Love, with Jadarian Price, with Riley Leonard. It's going to be the most impactful matchup for the offense. But I still believe that the Notre Dame offense could get their offensive line could lose that battle, and Notre Dame scores 17 to 20 points, and Notre Dame should still win the game. And the reason I say that is because I actually think the most impactful matchup in the game is the Notre Dame defensive line against the Texas A&M offensive line. I think that's the bigger one for me. I think that's the one that's going to ultimately determine the outcome of this game. If A&M's able to come out and have success on the offensive line, move Notre Dame off the ball, run the football, get Connor Wegman going with his legs, get Connor Wegman throwing the football, get their shots down the field, the Notre Dame offensive line could play really well and Notre Dame could still lose. And so whereas if the defensive line plays really well and the offensive line is just kind of average, I think Notre Dame still wins this game because I think Texas A&M is going to have a hard time scoring. That's where it comes down to for me, to where it doesn't really matter what the offensive line does. If the defensive line does what it should against A&M, it doesn't matter what the offensive line does to a degree. Notre Dame will still win, even if it's winning ugly. The offensive line could play great, but if A&M wins the matchup on the other side of the ball, then Notre Dame could still lose. So I think the Notre Dame defensive line in this matchup is going to have a bigger say in how the game is determined ultimately than the matchup of the offensive line against the Texas A&M defensive line. So I'm gonna sell that one, but I understand where you're coming from, and I don't think you're way off base at all. And I think you can make a case that that should be a buy, but I'm selling it for the reasons I discussed. I like this one from Ryan Michael. Ryan, buy, sell, or hold. Jadarian Price leads the team in rushing yards and total non-passing touchdowns, while Jeremiah Love leads the team in total offensive yards. I am buying this. I am definitely buying this because the way I'm reading your question, Ryan, is when you say total non-passing touchdowns, I assume you mean just rushing touchdowns, not rushing and receiving. And if that's the case, then I'm buying it because I could see a scenario where Jadarian Price leads his team in rushing and Jeremiah Love is second in rushing, but Jeremiah Love definitely has more yards. Like I think of the 2022 season in a similar situation to where Audric Estime led the team in rushing, but he wasn't way out ahead of Logan Diggs in total yards. Actually, let me pull this up real quick. And I want to get back to the all-purpose yards from that season. So yeah, Audric Estime had 98 more rushing yards than Logan Diggs, but only had 51 more yards than Logan Diggs from a total yard standpoint because Logan had more plays in the pass game. And I think Notre Dame should have used Logan Diggs more in the pass game, by the way. So yes, I could definitely see that scenario where Jeremiah Love Jadarian Price rushes for like 1,050 yards and 9 touchdowns, and Jeremiah Love has like 925 rushing yards, so like 125 less, 5 or 6 rushing touchdowns. But then Jeremiah Love has 300 to 400 receiving yards, where Jadarian has, like let's say 200, and then Jeremiah's 350 to 400. He would have more total yards and then having 4 or 5 receiving touchdowns. So I like the complexity of this premise, and I'm buying. I'll be surprised if Jeremiah Love doesn't lead the team in total offense and like all-purpose yards. I will not be surprised if Jadarian Price leads the team in rushing. I will be surprised if Jeremiah Love's not at the top. Now, would I be surprised if Jeremiah Love led the team in rushing? No, I wouldn't. I think it's going to be 1A, 1B. I mean, I really believe that. I think they're going to both be excellent. I don't think there's going to be a huge gap. But I think the way they're going to use Jeremiah is there's going to be times, though, they use those two guys together where Jeremiah is not getting as many carries, but he's still getting a lot of touches because they're using him on shovel. Because, like, here's an example. So, like, you say, okay, well, won't Jeremiah get the ball in the run game? And some of those times they're together? Yeah, to a degree. I mean, you'll see times where maybe they put Jeremiah outside and he comes in and they go motion and run a jet sweep. Well, the problem is on that play, they always shovel it. So if he catches it and runs, it's a reception. So if he catches it and runs for 50 yards and for a touchdown, that's a reception. And so those are things where I think that'll limit the rushing yards in that type of situation. So um, I I'm going to buy that one. I like that one, Ryan. I think that's a good one. I think that's a good one. Let's go to the next one. We've got one from Irish BH70. Had a couple of them. Number one, Jadar. Actually, I just had that one right. So that was from. I didn't get his first question. I'm gonna have to go back and find it. But his second question was, KVA is a Butkus Award winner at some point during his Notre Dame career. I'm gonna buy that. Now, I'm gonna definitely buy that. I think there's certainly a chance that that could happen. Um, yeah, I think he's a special player. There's no doubt. I think he's a very special player. I think he's a guy that's going to have a great career at Notre Dame. It wouldn't shock me if he's starting at some point in time during his career. I could definitely see that. I could definitely see that. And, if that happens, yeah, if that happens, I could see him being a Butkus Award winner. There's no doubt in my mind. I could see that. I could say a buy, seller, hold. Here's one I'll ask you guys. I'm going to do a buy, seller, hold for you all, and I'll tell you my answer. Buy, seller, hold. Notre Dame currently has two future Butkus Award winners on their roster because this is something that they actually have not had because Manti and Jalen never were on the same team. And then Jalen and Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah were never on the same team. So even though there weren't that many years between their awards, none of those guys played on the same team. Buy, seller, hold to you guys. There are two future Butkus Award winners on the Notre Dame roster. I'm going to buy that, actually. I am. I'm going to buy that one because I think the linebacking core is going to have a ton of production in the next few years. Having a couple issues here, a couple technical issues. I apologize. We'll get this squared away. Peter Dragon 55 says one of the portal wide receivers leads Notre Dame in receiving yards and touchdowns this season. Receiving yards, I'm going to say no. Receiving touchdowns, I'm gonna say sell on the yards, and I'm gonna say sell on the touchdowns. But of the two, if I had to say which one I'm most confident that one of those guys could win, it would probably be touchdowns. Because I could see, Bo Collins being a guy that has a bunch of red zone touchdowns and ends up leading the team in 8-9 touchdowns. But I just feel like with the way Jaden Greathouse has played, with having a guy like Mitchell Evans at tight end, it's going to be heck, even a guy like Jeremiah Love with some of the things he may do. I'm gonna sell that because I think Jaden Greathouse is going to be that guy. Would I be shocked if I'm wrong on that? No, I wouldn't be shocked at all if I'm wrong on that. But I could see one of those categories being led by a transfer guy. I definitely don't see both being led by a transfer guy. I think there's a much greater chance that Jaden Greathouse is going to be that guy that leads in both than one of the portal guys leads in both. Salty Virginia Peanuts, buy, sell, or hold. The great one will throw a pass at least 3 times this season. I'm going to sell that. I think he's going to throw a pass. We've already seen them try that in the game, but I don't see it being 3 times. So I'm going to have to sell that one. And I'm going to say, Salty, I thought your great Jaden Greathouse, and for those who don't know, Jaden Greathouse is the great one in Salty's eyes. But I'm a little surprised. I was expecting to get a little something different from Jaden Greathouse on that one, man. But yes, I'm going to sell that one. Okay, this is kind of funny. Sometimes it's up, sometimes it's down. We'll have to see how this is going. I'm going to have to go back and look through these, make sure that none were missed. So I buy, sell, or hold. PA Irish Guy 23. The defensive line as a whole will be better than last season. I'm going to buy this. Definitely going to buy this. Number one, I think the big end position is going to be even better than it was last year. Love what Javonte Jean-Baptiste did last year. Nana was a great teammate, real quality depth guy last year. But I just think the combination of Josh Burnham, RJ Oben, and Bryce Young is going to be better than what it was last year. I see no way that the defensive tackle group takes a step back. Not only do you have Cross and Mills coming back, but Jason Onye had a monster spring. I think he's going to be a great part of the rotation. You're going to get Gabriel Rubio back. You're going to have Donovan Heinisch. There's a lot of talented kids there. And then I look at the Viper position, and that's the position we're all worried about. But the Viper position gave almost no production last year. It's unfathomable to me to think that there's any way that the Viper position could be worse than it was last year. I just don't see how it could be. And I think Jordan Patel, at the very least, is going to match the numbers he had last year. But I think Boubacar is going to surpass the numbers that Burnham and Tuliamaka had last year. And I still haven't seen it from Junior Tuliamaka. I still don't get that one. I know that there's a lot of people in Notre Dame that like him a lot. He must be great in practice. I just haven't seen it in any of the practices we've been at. I didn't see it in the Blue Gold game. I didn't see it last season. I hope he proves me wrong, but I just don't see it. Just in that regard alone, that I expect the two edge positions to be better, that alone makes that an easy buy for me. Joe Allen, 72, buy, sell, or hold. Xavier Watts will be a repeat defensive player of the year. So obviously Xavier won the Bronco Nagurski Award last season as the best player of the in college football. I'm going to sell this one. Now, is there a scenario where Xavier Watts is once again the best player in college football? Sure, it's possible. But that award was first handed out in 1993. Rob Waldrop, a defensive lineman from Arizona, won that. 3 years in, Pat Fitzgerald won it, and he won it back-to-back times. Then we go all the way back to 2001 and 2022, 2021 and 2022. Will Anderson from Alabama won it twice. For me, I have a hard time seeing that award going to two players in 4 years, number one. I definitely think it's going to be hard for a safety to win it twice. The reason Xavier won it last year, on top of being really good, is he had some flashy plays and some big moments, and he had some stats that caught people's eyes. He led the nation in interceptions. He had the huge plays on national TV that we saw last season against USC and Caleb Williams. I don't know that he can replicate that, because I don't know that he's going to get thrown at enough to be that guy. Maybe he does. I hope he does. I hope teams try to challenge Xavier Watts this year. I just don't know that they will. But it's going to be hard for me to see him kind of having that level of production again. Now, what I'll say, Joe, is I'm not saying that Xavier Watts won't be a better player in 2024. I actually think he will be a better overall player in 2024. But as we know, a lot of these awards aren't just about who's the best player. It's about stats, reputation, big moment plays. And I don't know that Xavier's going to be even given the opportunity to repeat those things this year. And I'm not talking about opportunity from the Notre Dame staff. I'm talking about opportunity by other teams. I just don't see them going at him as much as they did last year. Now, the counter argument to that could be, well, if Christian Gray's as good as you say he is, and Jaden Mickey keeps getting better and better, and Benjamin Morrison's healthy, they may not be able to avoid Xavier Watts. And that's very true. And I hope you're right. I hope that's the argument that carries the day next season when we're talking about the production and the kind of year that Xavier Watts had. Indy Joe 14, with Marcus Freeman and Al Golden's background with odd man fronts and Notre Dame's abundance of talented linebackers, Notre Dame should be running a three-man front with another linebacker on the field. I am going to sell that, but I like where your head's at, because what you're doing, Joe, is you're looking at this and saying, this is the group that I think is the most talented. There's athleticism, there's production. These coaches have both done it before. I like where your head's at. I understand where you're coming from. I'm still selling it, though. And the reason I'm selling it is I don't know if that gets you your best 11 on the field in the best positions to be successful. I don't think that it does. I think in this scenario that you're describing, you're going to have Riley Mills and Howard Cross. We could find homes for them, but in a three-man front, go back and watch Marcus Freeman's 2021 season. You're going to need your nose tackle to be a guy that can take up a little bit more space, a guy that can do a little bit more at the point of attack. And you're going to be a little bit more vulnerable to the run. I don't see a scenario where you're going to get your 3 best linemen on the field with any consistency. And if you are going to do that, like you're going to have RJ Open be one of those 3. You're going to have Josh Burnham be one of those 3. I don't think that makes a lot of sense. Well, how about Jason Onye on there? We talked about that in the show the other day. In certain looks, I'm all for that. But as your permanent defense, going with Jason Onye and Riley Mills and Howard Cross with Rubio and those guys, and then you're not playing Josh Burnham as much, you're not playing RJ Open as much, you're not playing Boubacar as much, you're not playing, Batejo as much. I don't know that that's their best alignment in 2024. Are there some scenarios where I could see that? Sure. I think we'll see that at times. I think we should see that at times. Do I think it'll be their base defense? No, I don't. And nor do I think they should be moving to that in the future. I think in order to be a consistent 3 down front team where that's your base, you need to be able to consistently get big defensive linemen. And I don't know that Notre Dame has shown the ability to consistently do that. Now, in 2-3 years, maybe that changes, but I just haven't seen that. I haven't seen the ability to go do that, in my opinion. So I'm going to sell that one. Bracketed cover, bracket D, cover 3. That's how it is. Buy, sell, or hold. The Notre Dame linebackers will be the best position group on the team in 2024. I'm going to sell that. And while there is, I don't think your premise is bad at all. I get it. I can see it. It's certainly one of the more talented groups on the team in 2024. But when I look at the secondary and I think about the fact that there's already 2 proven All-American caliber players on that group, and Xavier Watts and Benjamin Morrison, I look at Christian Gray and Jaden Mickey and Jordan Clark and Rod Hurd from the portal. I think the secondary is going to be better than the linebacking core. And I could make a case that the defensive line is going to be the best position group on the defense. So then you look on the other side of the ball, you've got the running back room. I think it's going to be special this year. You've got the tight end room is going to be pretty good. We'll see how the receiving core plays out and offensive line. I think you could make a better argument that if you take the secondary as a whole, you can make an argument that there's a better chance that Notre Dame's linebacking core finishes 3rd than 1st when it comes to the best position groups on defense. And that is not at all said to be a knock on the defense or the linebackers, because I think they could be very good. It's more of a statement on how good I think those other 2 groups are. So, listen, Georgia's in 2021 had a special defense. I mean, I think we could all agree that Georgia's 2021 and 2022 defenses were pretty good, right? I think they led the nation in scoring in, let's see here. Let's pull up the 2022 season. 2022, Georgia finished 5th in scoring defense and 14.3 points per game. In 2021, the year I was referring to, they led the nation in giving up 10.2 points per game. If we were to rank the position groups, somebody has to finish last. And it's not saying that group was bad. It's just of these great groups, that one was the one you'd rank 3rd. And that's how I feel about the linebackers. They're just too young, in my view, to play with the consistency needed to be what we think they are going to be in this type of prediction. So for me, I'm selling that. I still think they're going to be pretty good, but I'm selling that one. Second buy, sell, or hold from bracket D, cover 3. Notre Dame will have a defensive player get 10 or more sacks this year. I'm going to sell that. I don't know that there's a player in the team that right now I have faith is going to do that. Jordan Patejo could maybe be that guy. I just don't think he has the pass rushing repertoire to do that. I don't believe that RJ Open is going to do that. I don't believe that Josh Burnham's going to do that. I don't think any of their interior guys can do it. I think Notre Dame's going to be a much more productive sack team this year, but it's going to be because of the sacks being spread around. I could see Notre Dame being a team that ranks top 10 in sacks, and they don't have a single guy with more than 9. And that's not that's not like an absurd thing to say either. That happens a little bit more than you think. And if you look at last year, for example, actually, I'm looking at the wrong thing. Let's go on sacks allowed. Let's go to sacks. So if you go to last season, there's a couple teams that were that way, that had really good sack production as a team, but didn't have anybody that actually finished super high in sacks individually. So if you go back and look last year, Washington, let's see here, Washington, No, that's not correct. Give me a second. No, that's sacks allowed. Sorry. Here we are. So let's go here. So last year, for example, Georgia. Hold on a second. This isn't right. Give me a sec. I'm looking at this right now. I'm still looking at sacks allowed, the sacks allowed teams. Give me a second, guys. I'm looking at the wrong stat. I'm being a knucklehead today. All right, so Penn State, because I had pulled up a couple stats. Last year, Penn State led the nation in sacks at 49 sacks a game. Their leading sacker had 7.5 sacks. That was Adisa Isaac, 7.5 sacks. Their next two guys were a linebacker who's now converted to DN and a corner with 4.5 sacks. And then four and the 3.5, 3.5, 3, 3, 3, 2.5, 2, 1.5, 1.5, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1. So they had a ton of sacks last year, led the nation in sacks, had 49 sacks. Not a single guy went over 10. Not a single guy got to 8. Last year, Florida State was the number 2 Power 5 team in college football in sacks. They ranked 4th overall. They had 46 sacks. Jared Verse had 9. He led their team in sacks. Nobody got to 10. So again, we see this a lot now in recent years where you're seeing these teams that get a lot of sacks, but not one guy dominates those sacks. And that's not true for everyone. James Madison last year ranked 6th in sacks. They had 2 guys over 10. UCLA had a guy I think had 13 last season. They were top 10 in sacks. You look at Texas A&M last year. They ranked 8th in sacks. The Edger and Cooper led them with 8 sacks last season. So this is not something that's like abnormal to have a team get a lot of sacks and have no one rack them up. Michigan last year ranked 11th in total sacks, and their top sack guy was Jalen Harrell at 6.5. So it's not abnormal. You can be a great pass rushing team and production team and not have one great pass rusher because your scheme is such that you're getting sacks all over. But then also to be a great pass rushing team in college football today, you've got to have multiple really good pass rushers. This isn't like the 1980s and 90s when we were growing up, where a lot of teams had like that one great defensive end that would get double digits in sacks. This is a different era. You've got more perimeter screen stuff. You've got more quick game. You've got more pocket movement. There's just a lot of things that are happening in the game now where if you want to be effective getting to the quarterback, it's hard to just constantly do it day after day after day, snap after snap after snap with a 4-man pressure. You're bringing more linebackers. You're bringing more twists and stunts, and you're just trying to scheme ways to get multiple guys into the backfield, and that's going to limit your ability to have one guy dominate. And so that's why I'm going to sell that one right now. Not only do I have a guy that I see doing it, but I think the sacks are going to be spread out a little bit. Yeah. 2 buy, sell, or hold uh, questions for, premises from Ball, P, and Shalala, kind of building on each other. The first part is buy, sell, or hold. 3 different no-name quarterbacks see action this year in different packages. Alternative, that 3 different quarterbacks see action counting garbage time reps. I'm selling the first one and I'm buying the second one. They'll definitely have 3 guys take snaps this year. There's no doubt in my mind that they'll have 3 guys take snaps this year. Do I believe that they'll have 3 guys take snaps in different packages, meaning like high leverage game situations? I'm selling that one. I think the only way that they have 3 quarterbacks play in a high leverage situation is if you have 2 injuries or an injury to one guy and ineffectiveness by another guy. So starting quarterback gets hurt, backup quarterback comes in, he doesn't play well over a period of time. The next guy goes in and he takes meaningful snaps. That's the only way I see them getting to 3. And the reason I say that is they don't have the type of quarterback depth they had in the past with like a Tyler Buckner or a Phil Jurkovec or a Brandon Wimbush or a Malik Zaire, where your number 2 quarterback was a guy that could go in and run and do something different. I don't think you're going to see that. I don't think this team has that. So I'm going to sell that one and buy the second one because we saw that last year. If you're a good team, you're probably going to have 3 quarterbacks be on the field at some point in time. Next one is from Tall Many. He's got 2 of them here. This is the one. All right. This is a good one. 2 good ones that kind of go together. Buy, sell, or hold. Notre Dame's Vegas odds of 10.5 regular season wins. So my buy, seller, holding 10.5 being the marker for Notre Dame. My dad and I were talking about this the other day, and my dad was really mad at himself because he was gonna bet last year on Notre Dame's Vegas odds. I think it was like 7.5 or 8.5. And he was confident that Notre Dame was going to win at least 9 games last year. And he's still kicking himself for not putting some money down on it. And he's like, I don't know if I'm going to do it this year because 10.5 is a very reasonable number. So basically, in order to win, Notre Dame has to go at least 11-1 to 12-0. That's tougher odds. So I'm buying the premise of the odds being where they are. I think I'm buying it because there's two ways to look at your question. One is, am I buying that that's where the odds should be? And I absolutely think that's where the odds should be. I think this is much more representative of the kind of team that Notre Dame is going to have, the kind of talent they have coming back, the kind of talent that's coming into the program from the transfer portal, and also from the standpoint of them being in high school kids that can help. So I'm buying it on that premise. I'm also buying it on I'm taking the overs basically. So I'm buying it from the premise of, are you buying that Notre Dame is going to go over? If you could look at it that way, I'm buying that as well. 11-1 is my prediction for Notre Dame this year. I just look at their roster and I have a hard time seeing more than one team that can beat them. And so, there's a question that gets into other possibilities later. So I'll answer that. We'll dive more into that one then, but I'm going to take this one now. And then I have a question for somebody in the chat that gave an answer to this. And I'm not sure if they're answering this premise. So before I answer the next one, Nathan Milton, you had a buy and a sell as your answer to this, because there's people in the chat that are giving their buy, sell, or hold opinions, and I love that. I want to see more of that. It's very fascinating to watch those and to see those and to see when you guys agree with me, when you disagree with me. I'm actually enjoying myself looking at those. But I'm curious, Andy Milton fan, do you have a buy that of the 10.5, and you're selling that they're going to host a playoff game? Or are you buying that 10.5 should be the number, but you're selling that Notre Dame will cover 10.5? So I'm very curious what your buy and sell is that one, or is that just a late response? Are you just behind in the show and you're responding to something else? I'm very curious what the answer is to that one. So you just said yes, my man. Okay, so you're saying you think they're going to go 11-1 or 10-0 or 12-0, but you don't think they're going to host a first round college football playoff game? I'm curious how that can be, because if Notre Dame's 11-1, there's no way they're not at least an 8 seed. Like, there's no way. There's no way that Notre Dame doesn't host a playoff game if they win more than if they cover that spread. No way. So I'd just be curious why you don't think Notre Dame would host a playoff game if they are. Yeah. So even if they lose an unrated, my man, if Notre Dame is 11-1 and they lose to Navy, but they beat A&M, Florida State, Louisville, and USC, they're still going to be at least an 8 seed. I mean, Clemson in 2017 lost to a 4-8 team and still made the college football playoff. In 2016, Clemson lost to an unranked Pitt team at home and still made the college football playoff. So there's no way that Notre Dame goes 11-1 this year. No way. And is not at least an 8 seed. No way. With that being said, that's also why I'm buying the second one, because if I have Notre Dame being at least 11-1, then I'm definitely buying that Notre Dame will host a first round college football playoff game. So definitely, I say if Notre Dame 11-1, I'll be shocked if they're anything lower than the 5 seed. I think the lowest they go in that scenario is 6 in that committee. So in that situation, so I absolutely believe, and I'm also going to disagree with the premise that if Notre Dame goes 10-2 this year, guys, there's no way, unless they have just terrible losses. I don't think there's any way Notre Dame's not one of the 12. I don't. And somebody just said the college football playoff committee is going to screw Notre Dame. I don't know how many times I can say this, folks. The college football playoff committee has been very, very favorable to Notre Dame for years. For years. The only time that Notre Dame doesn't get a higher ranking is in years where maybe their way out, and they've got to manipulate Notre Dame to help one of the teams that's getting in. But anytime Notre Dame is good, the playoff committee loves all Notre Dame. Heck, Notre Dame finishes the 5 seed 2 years ago, and they went 11-1 and had 0 wins over ranked opponents. 0 wins over ranked opponents, and the committee had Notre Dame at 5. So this notion that Notre Dame fans have that the playoff committee is going to screw them over, if that happens, that'll be the first time that happens. That'll be the first time it happens. Now, 10-2 Notre Dame may not host a playoff game, and that's very possible. Or 10-2 Notre Dame may not host a playoff game, but they'll be in. They'll certainly be in. There's no question about it, in my opinion. All right, let's get to the next one. Buy, sell, or hold from PA Irish Guy or Irish Guy 23. Notre Dame will have a DB with 5 or more interceptions. I'm going to buy that. And then there's a follow-up buy, sell, or hold from Ball Peen Shalale on that I'll just kind of go with now. I put these two together for that reason. One of Christian Gray or Jaden Mickey carries the torch and has 5+ interceptions in the 2024 season. Absolutely buy both of those, because if Notre Dame has a guy that has more than 5 interceptions, 5 or more interceptions, I do believe it will be one of those two guys. It could also potentially be, the other guy could be, is like a Rod Hurd. I could also see Rod Hurd being that guy as well. That would be the only caveat to me full go buying the second one, because if Jaden Mickey and Christian Gray are splitting a lot of snaps, then one of them neither of them may get enough opportunities to get to 5. But I think that they're going to get tested a lot. I could see Xavier Watts getting over 5 again, but I think it's going to be a scenario where they just don't challenge Benjamin Morrison a ton. They don't challenge Xavier Watts a ton, and that leads somebody else an opportunity to get to 5. I could also, but again, I'm buying it on the second one, but I do think that there's a chance that it could be a Rod Hurd or a Don Schuler that ends up being that guy. So I could definitely see that. And I do think that Notre Dame will have someone with 5 interceptions this year. Xavier had 7 last year. I think Notre Dame's going to force a lot of interceptions this year. I do. I think when I look at the quarterbacks that they play this season, I look at the offenses that they play this season, I look at what I think of their pass rush, I look at what I just think this team is capable of. I think they're going to force a lot of interceptions this season. I do. And 5 is a good number, but they've had each of the last 2 years, they've had one guy with at least 6. And I think that streak continues in 2024. So I'm going to buy that one as well. Walk on, carry on 78. Buy, sell, or hold. Gary Lambert is starting at right tackle by game 5. I'm going to sell that. I'm not as down on the right tackle position as some others right now, but I'm also going to choose to be optimistic today. And the way that Emil Wagner played in the blue gold game, even though he didn't play that great in the scrimmage before, from what I could see, and even though I'm still not sold on him being a guy that can take the reins snap after snap after snap, I think game 5 might be a little bit too soon for Gary Lambert to take over. I mean, look, Joe Alt didn't take over till like game 6 or 7 in 2021, and they had 3 left tackles get injured. That was a much worse situation for me. So I could see Gerby starting next year. It would surprise me if it's by game 5. I will say this, however. Here's my double optimistic take. If Gary Lambert is starting by game 5 next year, and it's not injury related, it's because he's phenomenal. Because I don't think those other 2 tackles are going to play that poor that you're going to feel the need to put him in by game 5. So if he's playing by game 5, it means he came in and got going real fast. Second one from DJ. Buy, sell, or hold. Jordan Faison will have a breakout year and give up lacrosse for 2025. I'm going to sell that one. I think Jordan Faison is going to continue to be a key part of the Notre Dame football team. He's a good football player, but I just don't see him being the guy. And I think he would have to be the guy for him to even think about giving up lacrosse, because the reality is there's just no need for him to give up lacrosse this early. If he gave up lacrosse in as a senior, because let's say as a senior at Notre Dame's football team, he jumps up and he has the kind of year where it's like, hey, man, you got a chance to go play in the National Football League. But you've got to really lock in and improve in this area, that area, whatever. And he's getting that kind of feedback. Then I could maybe see it where he doesn't play lacrosse in his senior year at Notre Dame, but I don't see any scenario where he doesn't play lacrosse next year because of a breakout. The only way that I could see that is if he just gets hurt. I don't see a scenario where he gives up lacrosse, nor should he. A receiver is the one position more than any other where I think guys playing two sports makes a lot of sense, and especially lacrosse for reasons we've discussed in past shows. Floating Irish had a couple here, so I want to get to those. Buy, sell, or hold. Notre Dame will have victories over 2 10-win teams by the end of the regular season on their resume. I'm buying that. I think there's multiple teams that have a chance to be 10-plus win teams this year. I think that Miami of Ohio has a chance to be a 10-plus win team this year. They won 11 last year, so I think 10 is possible for them this season. I think Louisville, once again, could have a chance to be a 10-plus win team. I think Florida State will be a 10-plus win team. I think USC will have a chance to be a 10-win team. Not as optimistic about them as I am some others, but I think that's a shot. So, yes, I think Notre Dame will beat two teams with 10-plus wins. The Big Ten, here's the second one, buy, sell, or hold. The Big Ten will have more teams in the playoff than the SEC. That is a tougher one. So as I'm looking forward to the potential college football playoff, I think Ohio State will be a playoff team. I think one of Penn State or Michigan is going to still be really good and be a playoff team. And then I think one of the teams that's new to the league will make the playoff. Oregon is my bet for right now. Although I could see USC surprising some people and being good, really good again this year. SEC, I think Georgia's going to make it. I think that Ole Miss is going to have a really good shot to make it. I think Alabama's still got a really good shot to make it. And then after that, it's okay. It really comes down to, does Michigan stay on track from what they were? And Penn State's still good? And that's how you get to 4 in the Big Ten? Is it a scenario where, and that's how they have more, and then there's a couple teams in the SEC where they just kind of beat each other up? Because of just the traditional SEC teams, I can see 3 of them making it just from the traditional SEC teams: Georgia and Alabama and Ole Miss. I could see 3 of those making it. Then you have 2 teams coming in from the Big 12 in Texas and Oklahoma, who I also think could make it. So I see 2 of the traditional Big Ten teams making it. That's my prediction. Ohio State and one of Penn State or Michigan. And then one of the new teams making it. With the SEC, I see 3 traditional of the SEC teams making it, whether it be, I think Georgia's a no-brainer. I think Bama's going to have a shot to be a playoff team again. And then one of Ole Miss, maybe LSU, Tennessee has a breakout with Nico as their quarterback. One of those 3 teams making it as the 3rd traditional SEC team. And then I think one of the newcomers will make it. And my bet on that is Texas, obviously. But I could see Oklahoma maybe breaking out a little bit too. So I just think it's going to be more for the SEC. I've said this for a while. Michigan was excellent last year. Ohio State was a really good football team last year. Penn State was overrated. The year before, Ohio State and Michigan were both really good football teams. I was fine with both of them making the playoff from the standpoint of their playoff caliber. I had some issues with some things that year, but they were both playoff contenders. But after that, it was the Big Ten has been super top heavy for a while now, where there's like 2 good teams in the league, 3 at the most, whereas the SEC is going to have more. And the reality is that league's just going to get more of the benefit of the doubt when things are close. So that's why I'm going sell on that, because I think the SEC is going to have more. I do. I think they're going to have more. It's a good premise, though, because I really had to think about it and talk through it. And those are my favorite kinds to do in this type of scenario. So let's get to some more. We got 2 from John A1, buy, sell, or hold. And this is the one I was referring to earlier. If Emil Wagner and Charles Jagasaw are the top OTs on the roster in 2024, Emil Wagner should be left tackle and Jagasaw right tackle. I'm going to sell that because you can make a case, John, that from the blue gold game, and I know that you were very high on how Emil played in the blue gold game and his as you all saw early when I was giving you the little snapshot of the breakdown I did, Emil graded out as the top offensive lineman on the blue squad from a doing your job snap after snap standpoint. Billy Schrouth was more impressive to me overall, but I thought Emil did a really, really good job of just do your job snap after snap after snap. And that's important. But do I trust Emil Wagner to now all of a sudden be my blindside protector at quarterback? No, I don't. And the other problem that I have with Emil is when Charles gets beat, he gets beat wide. He doesn't get driven back into the quarterback. At least I haven't seen that yet. When Emil gets beat, when Tosh gets beat, a lot of times it's guys get under their pads, get him on skates, and drive him into the quarterback. As a former quarterback, that my ACL, I can just feel it cringing right now when I think about my left tackle getting driven back into my backside. It's a dangerous premise, and I just wouldn't trust that from them. Could I see a scenario where Emil plays so well that he forces the staff to make that move? It's possible. It's possible. I just don't see it. I still think Charles Jagasaw gives this team their best chance at left tackle. And I'll have more on Jagasaw's performance from the Blue Gold game. I don't think it was as bad as some people are making it out to be. There's some technical things that he has to fix. That's the problem. It's not lack of foot quickness or agility. I've seen him do it quickly in that game. There's some technical things he has from going from hand to hand with his feet get out of whack. And that causes him to kind of take some awkward pause that then allows guys to beat him outside. It's something that can be fixed, and I think it will be fixed. So I think I'm going to sell that. His other buy, seller, hold. Deion Colzie and Jaden Thomas won't be in the six-man rotation in 2024. So I gotta buy it in that they both won't be in it, and I'm going to assume that it's a buy meaning both of them. So if one of them's in it, then it's still, obviously your premise is that it still would be a sell. If I think one of them's going to be in it, I'm selling it. I'd have to think they're both going to be out of it. So we know Greathouse is going to be in it. I'm quite confident that Chris Mitchell is going to be in it. I'm quite confident that one of Jordan Faison and Jaden Harrison is going to be in it. I'm quite confident that Bo Collins is going to be in it. So now the question is, does Jaden Thomas and Deion Colzie both stay at Notre Dame, number one? And then if they do both stay at Notre Dame, are they going to be ahead of, both of them going to be ahead of KK Smith and Micah Gilbert and Cam Williams and the third of the slots in Harrison or Gilbert? I'm going to sell it, John, because I think one of them will. I think one of them will stay and be in the six-man rotation, just assuming good health. If you force me to pick both in or both out, I would argue right now that I would, this is a guess, that there's a better chance that both are out than both are in. That would be my takeaway on that one. So very, very good question, John. Very good question. Part of me wanted to hold and say, let's see what happens when the portal closes, but I don't want to hold that much, and so I'm going to go ahead and give you my answer now. Mark Smooks has 4 buy-seller holds. Number 1, buy-seller hold. Notre Dame wins at least 11 regular season games. I'm going to buy that. Number 2, Notre Dame makes the semifinal playoff game. I am in a good mood today. I'm going to buy that one. 3, Notre Dame wins a semifinal playoff game. I'm selling that one because I still need to see that this team can go to that point. As excited as I am about what this team can be, there's still just too many teams out there that have proven they can win in those scenarios that Notre Dame has not proven that they can win in those scenarios. I mean, no, guys, for me, Notre Dame has not even proven they can beat top teams in the regular season, much less in the postseason. Is Notre Dame capable of winning a semifinal game? Absolutely. Is Notre Dame capable on number 4 of winning the championship? Absolutely. When I look at the makeup of their roster, I think they absolutely can. But they've got so much to prove before I can say I'm buying those two things. So I'm absolutely buying 11 wins regular season. I'm absolutely buying them winning 2 games because here's the way I look at it. If they're 11-1, I think they're at worst a 6-5. I think they're a 5 seed. That's what I think, because of the challenging nature of the Big Ten and SEC schedules. So I think they're 5. If they win 5, if they're 5, that means in the second round on a neutral field, they're playing the 4 seed. The 4 seed, in my opinion, will most likely be a team that's not as good as Notre Dame. So it'll either be the ACC champ or the Big 12 champ. It won't be the number 2 Big 10 or the number 2 SEC. It'll be ACC champ or the Big 12 champ, or even potentially the AAC champ, potentially, although I think that's less likely. So now you're in a situation where they're playing the Big 12 champ, Oklahoma State, Kansas State, Baylor, Utah, somebody like that, or they're playing the ACC champ, Clemson, Florida State, somebody like that, Miami. And I like Notre Dame in all those matchups. So that gets them to the semis. Now it's Ohio State, Michigan, Penn State. No, not Penn State, because I'd take Notre Dame. That's a bad example. Oregon, Texas, Bama, Georgia, a team like that. That's now where Notre Dame has to go prove that they can win that type of game, and they just haven't done that in a long time. So I'm selling that one for now. I'm going to sell the number 4 for now. Maybe hold might be a better example, because the counter could be, well, if they win the first 2, that's going to give them enough momentum and excitement to win the semis, or confidence to win the semis. And that's fair. But I think in the first 2 games are most likely going to be against inferior opponents. So maybe hold's a better one for 3 and 4. But I'm definitely buying the first 2. Definitely buying the first 2. Your mom's calling with 2 buy, sell, or holds. First one, Notre Dame will have 4 or more receivers with 100-yard games. I'm going to cheat a little bit on this one and say 4 players, not just receivers. If it's just 4 wide receivers, I'd probably sell that, although not confidently. If it's 4 total players, I'm definitely buying, because I think Jeremiah Love is going to have a 100-yard game this year. I think a tight end is going to have a 100-yard game this year. And I think at least 2 receivers are going to have 100-yard games. I'd say even 3. So I'm going to buy it in both instances, total or receivers, but I'm a little less on board with saying 4 different receivers will have 100-yard games this season. And then the second buy, sell, or hold from your mom's calling, Notre Dame will be hosting an SEC team in the playoff this year. Boy, I would love that. That would be great. I'm going to sell that, because I think most likely what you're going to have is, you're going to have a second Big 12 team, or a second ACC team, or maybe a Big 10, a third or fourth Big 10 team, most likely. I think the one thing that I could see the committee doing is, I could see the committee being a little reluctant of sending a Southern team up to Notre Dame. I think what they may do is like maybe flip, a Northern team, and with that, maybe put like the third or fourth Big 10 team in there and do something that way. That's where I think the committee could maybe finagle some stuff, is something like that. I could see that. So I'm going to sell that, but I hope I'm wrong on that one. I really do. We have a buy, sell, or hold from the 5 Burkhart boys. Excuse me. I know how to say that one. I grew up with some people named that. Burkholders. His one is Riley Mills throws for more yards than Sam Hartman. I'm absolutely buying that. Absolutely buying that. And I'm just going to say, in 12 games, let's just take it this way, because I think Riley Leonard's, if he's healthy, is going to play. And I didn't correct the spelling on Riley on that one. That's on me. But I'm going to say in 12 games, let's say Riley Leonard's healthy for 12 games. I absolutely believe he's going to throw for more than 2,689 yards. Absolutely believe it. Absolutely believe it. I think he'll be closer to at least 2,900 at least in the regular season. So I'm absolutely buying that one. And P. Irish guy with the same one as the one before. Notre Dame will have 4 or more receivers with 100-yard games, and I'm gonna sell that one. I'm gonna buy that one. Excuse me. Future Domer Dad, KVA will be a starter by season's end. I'm gonna go hold on that one. I want to see what happens in the portal this year with Notre Dame of who stays and who goes before I answer that one. I'm leaning towards buying it because I could just see a scenario where at some point in time this year, he and Drake Bowen are starting together. I could also see a scenario where somebody gets hurt and he's saying, so I'm going to hold for now, and I want to see what happens in the portal before I fully answer that one. John, I don't know why those bottom ones, I'm sorry, I kept messing those up. That's my fault on those because I had John Varvel having the same question. So let me find John's question here. And I am sorry that I messed that up, John. I'm going to go try to find that. I got the message board open. So let me go see if I can find John's question here real quick. So it's Control F is a beautiful thing on a computer. Helps you find things pretty quickly. Give me a second. All right. Why is this not working for me today? Okay. I can't find your question, John. Just give me 1 second real quick. All right. I'm going to see here. We haven't got to those yet. Okay. So it'll be above that. Oh, here it is. Here was John's question. And again, I apologize for not having this correct on the screen. But John's question is Notre Dame will win a championship with CJ Carr. That was John's actual question. Notre Dame will win a championship with CJ Carr. I'm going to be short and sweet on that one. I'm going to buy it. I think I've said, because here's why. This isn't even about the CJ Carr hype train that's going on right now, which is deserved. He's incredibly talented. He's a great kid. He's all those things. I'm buying it because I have said that I think Notre Dame's going to win a championship in the next 3 to 4 years. I don't know that it's going to be this year. We'll see. It's too early for me to really be on that hype train just yet. It's still only April. Maybe I might be there by August. I'll probably wait until September 1st to really be on that train. Of course, for those that don't quite know the schedule down pat, August 31st is the A&M game. So I may wake up on September 1st feeling that way. But I just feel that Notre Dame program is heading in a direction where they're going to win a title in the next 3 or 4 years. I fully expect that by no later than 2025, CJ Carr is going to be starting quarterback. So, yeah, I think he'll win a championship. So I'm going to buy that one. And I think he'll be part of it, but I don't think he's going to have to carry the team the way that past quarterbacks have been required to do that if Notre Dame is going to win a championship. Christopher Crosby, buy, sell, or hold. Preston Zinner is a very talented young player in a very loaded room. Buy, sell, hold. That he ends up at Viper. For what it's worth, I like that move a lot more than moving Junior there. I tend to agree with you. I'm gonna buy that, Christopher. I'm gonna buy that. I contemplated selling it at first because my gut reaction is that he's gonna move, but it would be to tight end. But I'm gonna buy that because I don't love Viper recruiting. They have already made some very puzzling personnel moves on the defensive line, like already moving Cole Mullins into defensive tackle, who barely weighs 240 pounds. It just makes, and then putting him ahead of Brendan Vernon. I just think that's an absolutely ridiculous move. And so there's just so many puzzling, head scratching things that by next year, I could see a scenario where Jordan Patello and Junior Tuihalamaka are not here anymore, or at least not a Viper. Patello will be gone, but I could see a situation where Tuihalamaka is like, they got to move him to big end because he can't play Viper. So I would say buy it because I don't know that they're recruiting a Viper. Even if they go to the portal and get a Viper, it's Boubacar and the portal guy. You still would need a third to play, and I could see Preston Zinner being that guy. I don't believe Notre Dame wants to lose him. From what I'm told, they value him quite a bit. He's just like you said, he's on a loaded room. So I could see that. And he's 6'3", he's athletic, he's got long frame, he doesn't need to gain a ton of weight to be able to play that in certain situations. So I'm going to buy that one, Christopher. I'm going to buy that one. Okay, here we go. Notre Dame 2164, one of the OGs. Cam Williams finds his groove and plays significant time at receiver sometime this year. I'm definitely buying that one. I'll be very surprised if Cam Williams is not part of the rotation at some point in time this season. Very surprised. Here's one from PA Irish Guy 23. Christian Gray is Notre Dame's best cornerback this season. I am selling that. I think Christian Gray is incredibly talented. I think you could make a case that Christian Gray would be their most physically gifted cornerback this year. I definitely think you can make that case. I just don't see Benjamin Morrison not being their best corner. I don't think it's nuts to say what you said, P. Irish Guy. I understand it, but I think there's a chance that Benjamin Morrison could be the best cornerback in college football this year. I think it's him and Will Johnson are the two best corners in college football. So I'd be shocked if he's not Notre Dame's best corner. And if he's not, Andy, it's either A, he's injured, and maybe this is behind your premise, or B, Christian Gray is even better than way better than even than we thought. Where I have said in the past, I think Christian Gray as a sophomore could be better than Benjamin Morrison was as a sophomore. Maybe. I don't see a scenario in which Christian Gray as a sophomore is better than Benjamin Morrison as a junior. That one I don't see. Buy, sell, or hold. We have from Lou Holtz's grandson had two of them. So number one, Rocco Spindler will develop into an elite guard. I'm going to sell that. I think Rocco has a very good chance of starting. I think based on what I saw this spring, he absolutely should be the starter based on what we've seen. As long as Rocco puts in the work this offseason and stays in same shape he's in, or maybe gets a little bit better and goes out and maximizes his potential as a player, he absolutely should be starting for Notre Dame. I very much liked what I saw from Rocco in the spring game. Pat Coogan struggled mightily. I've said it before last year. Rocco at his best was significantly better than Pat at his best, but there just was too much up and down from Rocco. But even if Rocco maximizes his potential and plays to the best of his ability for 12 games and is consistent and steady with moments of dominance, I still don't think he's elite. I think he could be very good. I think he could be part of an elite offensive line, but I don't think he's an elite player. And when I think elite, I think Liam Eichenberg All-American, obviously recently. I think of Joe All-American recently. I think of Ronnie Stanley. I think of Quentin Nelson. I think of Mike McGlinchey 2017. I think of those guys. When I think of Rocco Spindler, I think more along the lines of, what Alex Bars was in 2017. I think more along the lines of what Aaron Banks was in 2020, what Robert Hainsey was in 2020. I think more along the lines of those guys. Nick Martin, where pretty good player, but not elite. A guy that's going to get drafted, but not elite. So no, I don't see that. His second buy, sell, or hold is CJ Carr will be a Heisman level quarterback at some point. I'm going to hold that for now because the kid has not played a single snap of college football. And I'm not trying to Beano cook the kid, right? I'm not. And I'm just not going to be in a situation where I'm going to say, yes, he will be. Do I think – I'll go back to what I said before. Do I think CJ Carr is an elite talent? Yeah, I do. Do I think CJ Carr can be an elite player at Notre Dame? Yeah, I do. Do I think Notre Dame could win a championship with CJ Carr? Yeah, I do. If all those things turn out to be true, will he be a Heisman level quarterback? Yeah, sure. In that case, he will. But so I can do 1 + 1 + 1 = 3, but I'm just not quite ready to buy that one because I feel like that's unfair of me to put that kind of thing on a kid who has yet to take a snap of college football. I'm excited to see what CJ can do. I think the sky's the limit for CJ Carr and this program, but I just want to pump the brakes a little bit on the kids so we don't get too carried away and just completely Beano cook them. I just don't want to see that. I just don't want to see that where he can then never we got to be careful to not go so far down the hype train with CJ that we make it impossible for him to ever live up to expectations. And that's my concern. That's my concern. Irish Mosaic. Given the penalties Arizona State just received for their violations of the COVID restrictions, would you buy, sell, or hold that Michigan will receive the same level of penalties? I'm selling that. I don't think Michigan will get the same level of penalties because I think Michigan will get some. I think Michigan will get put on probation, which means nothing really. I think Michigan will have some sort of scholarship reduction. I think Michigan, which they'll get around easily with in-state kids and NIL stuff, they'll be able to get around that. I think they'll have some sort of. I could see them doing some sort of you know games that they have to vacate from 2022. I could see all that. I don't see any scenario in which the NCAA has the guts to put them on probation and then keep them out of the postseason. I don't see any kind of bowl ban happening, which is what Arizona State got. They can't be in the postseason of 2023. I don't see any scenario in which Michigan has to vacate the 2023 season. I don't. So I believe Michigan will get some things that happened. And look, Antoine, I know you're a Michigan fan, but man, you gotta at least be honest about what happened is not nothing. If Ohio State did exactly what Michigan was accused of, you would not say it's a nothing burger. I just don't think you would. Do I think the NCAA is going to force them to give up the 23 championship, vacate games in 23? No way. Do I think the NCAA is going to force them to miss the postseason? No way. No way. I don't see any scenario in which that happens to a team like Michigan. No, don't see it. Now here's what I could see happening. Let's say Michigan just kind of falls apart this year, and I'm not saying it's going to happen. I'm just making a hypothetical. Let's say they fall apart this year and they're like 4-6 or 4-7, and they're not bowl eligible. I could see the NCAA randomly just coming out like, "Here's our ruling. We're gonna do this to Michigan, and they can't be in the postseason in 2023-4." I could see something like that, but I just don't think. Look, they did that to Arizona State because they're Arizona State. Let's be real about that, and because it's related to COVID and the perception, especially amongst. I won't get into this, but there's still a perception about COVID that I don't think should be about COVID that makes the perception of what they did to be worse than what Michigan did. And to a degree, I do think there's some merit to it. Anyone that's known me since 2020 knows my opinion about COVID and the things that we did and whether we should or shouldn't have done them. But what Arizona State is accused of is if the experts were right about COVID and it was as dangerous as a lot of people thought in 2020. I'm not trying to argue that point. I'm really not. But I'm saying if we took what the general consensus was in 2020 about COVID, it was incredibly irresponsible for an institution to be sneaking kids onto campus. Incredibly irresponsible to be having kids coming and going and doing things like that, right? Like just incredibly irresponsible. And so I do think it's worse from that standpoint. Take my opinion of the whole thing out of it, of what I think COVID was or is, what I think we should or should not have done is completely irrelevant. If you go back to 2020 and what the rules were and what a lot of people thought COVID was and all that type of stuff, the fact that they were doing what they were doing was really bad. Because if people were right about what COVID was then, you're literally putting people's lives at risk by bringing people onto campus and some of the different things that were going on. I don't think they were. That's a different conversation, though. And so that's why I think that's definitely different than you had some guy stealing signals from the other team. That's cheating. That's giving you an unfair advantage. That's quite a different deal than what Arizona State was accused of, and in my opinion, on that. Even though I don't necessarily agree with the premise of those things, that's still the reality of how the perception of the people handing down the punishment is going to be what I just said. And so that's why I do think that you're going to see a much different look at that, in my view. All right, let's get to some more here. Buy, seller, holds. Okay. All right, there we go. I'm trying to. This is okay. It's really funny how this is going. Okay, Cousin Eddie's mobile home. Buy, sell, or hold. Notre Dame fills all positions of need. Also, that they make a deep playoff run. I'm going to buy both. I mean, fill all positions of need, I assume, with the roster. I think they'll get a cornerback to help fill that depth chart. I think that's really the only place right now. Oh, yeah, definitely need to get a guy. Punter, I think they'll get a guy as a non-skill position. So, yeah, I think they'll fill all those needs. And do I think they'll make a deep playoff run? I just said earlier in one that I think I bought on Notre Dame hosting a playoff game and winning and getting the semis. And if you get to the semis in today's era, that's a deep playoff run. That's a successful playoff run. So I'm gonna buy both of those. And then Ram Cray 75 says Marcus Freeman will finally get Notre Dame over the hump by beating a top 10 ranked Florida State and winning a playoff game this year. So I like where you're going with that one. So you're not saying beating a top 10 opponent or beating Florida State. You're saying that you're going to beat a top 10 Florida State team, which Notre Dame has not done, right? Since 1993. So, and win a playoff game, which obviously they didn't do in 1993. So I'm going to buy both of those because I do think Florida State's going to be a top 10 team this year. I'm very high on Florida State this season. I could be wrong on that, but I am. I think Notre Dame will beat them. So that's 2. And then I am going to buy on winning a playoff game this year. So yes, I am going to buy on that. Okay, okay. Riker Ferg with buy, sell, or hold. First one, Coach D will recommit to be a forever fan of the Broncos. I'm going to sell this one, but I'm not selling with conviction because I'm not going to lie. I've been a Broncos fan literally for 40 years, and while I'm upset with where the team is now and have been for years, and they're just like a joke. I mean, they really are. Just the things they're doing are just a joke. But at the end of the day, if John Elway comes back and is part of the organization again, and if they make some moves that I like and they realize the uniforms are just absolutely hideous. And I mean, are there some things that I could come back to being a Broncos fan again? Yeah, I'm not going to lie. I could. Do I feel like that's possible right now? No, I definitely don't. I really don't. But we'll see. We'll see. But I'm going to sell that one for now, but I'm not saying with a great amount of conviction. And then his second one, buy, sell, or hold, is Xavier Watts will be a first-round pick in the 2025 NFL Draft. I'm going to sell that one, but not because I don't think Xavier Watts could be the best safety in next year's draft class. I think it's possible. We'll see. I mean, there's some good safeties in next year's draft class. I think the kid from Georgia, I believe, is going to be in the draft class next year. Thank you. And so, but it's just also safety is just not, it's not a position where you've seen a lot of guys get drafted in the first round anymore. So he could be the best safety in the draft class next year and fall to 35, 40, or second best safety in the draft class and fall that far as well. So I'm just not going there. I'm going to look at it from the standpoint of him being a little shorter than Kyle Hamilton. He's not as big as Kyle Hamilton, obviously, and some of the freak things Kyle Hamilton could do. He'd have to run real fast, in my opinion. If Xavier Watts goes out there and runs a 4.47 and measures in around 6 foot plus and all that, it's possible. It's possible. I'm going to sell it for now, just because of the nature of the position he plays. But at the very least, barring injury, he's a day 2 player next year, in my opinion. Absolutely. And again, unless he's better than Kyle Hamilton. But here's the thing: Coleman Beavers asked, and this is a fair response, unless he's better than Kyle Hamilton, and asked even if he wins the Nagurski Award again this year. Yeah, because that doesn't have anything to do with. It's a fair question, but that doesn't have anything to do with the NFL draft. I mean, he could win. He could win the Nagurski Award and still go out and be a guy that gets picked in the 3rd round. If the measurables aren't there, if the speed's not there, and those type of things, that doesn't have anything to do with it. I mean, Pat Fitzgerald was a 2-time winner of the award, right? Where was he drafted coming out of high school? Does anybody know? Was he, or college? Was he? Does anyone know? I don't think he was drafted. Yeah, Pat Fitzgerald won the award twice, and he went undrafted in 1997. He was two-time Nagurski Award winner as the best player in college football. He's the best linebacker in college football 2 years in a row, and he went undrafted. It, it doesn't really have a lot to do with it. It doesn't have a lot to do with it. So, no, I don't think so. All right. I'm going to ask a favor in the chat. Guys, this show, you guys were doing great for so long. And then we talked about Michigan, and now that's all you guys are talking about is trying to fight with the Michigan fan. Can you stop? Can we move on and get back on track to what we're actually discussing so we can actually have some fun with this? Antoine, as well, just stop responding, please, and let's get back on track to what we're talking about today. Okay? Otherwise, I'm just going to start, you guys just don't make me have to babysit. We're having a lot of fun. We're almost 2 hours in. Let's get back on track and actually act like grown-ups. How's that sound? All right, let's go back to the buy, sell, or hold questions. We got one from Spark 5219. Buy, sell, or hold. Notre Dame only loses one game this year before the playoff, and it won't be against Texas A&M. I'm buying that wholeheartedly because if they lose to Texas A&M, I don't see a scenario where they run the table because it'd show that there's some flaws with this football team that someone else will exploit at some point in time. If they're a team that can lose to A&M, then between Louisville, USC, Florida State, and let's see, I think Louisville, Florida State, USC, probably the only three. One of those three teams will beat them. It's kind of like last year. Notre Dame was a good enough team to blow out 8 of the 9 teams that they won. I mean, we've talked about this before, but go look at Notre Dame's success last year. When Notre Dame played well, they didn't just win, they destroyed people. I mean, the Duke game was competitive. They won that by a touchdown, but they beat Navy by 39, Tennessee State by 53, NC State by 21, Central Michigan by 24, USC by 28, Pitt by 51, Wake Forest by 38, Stanford by 33, and Oregon State by 32. I mean, they destroyed people. But when they weren't on, they just played poorly against inferior teams. That's just the reality of it. They played poorly against an inferior Louisville team. They played poorly against an inferior Clemson team who was missing 8 starters in that game. So if Notre Dame is still the same talented but flawed team as last year, they'll be better than they were last year. They'll be 10-2. They'll, and against what I think is going to be a slightly tougher schedule, top to bottom. Last year it was better at the top. This year I think will be better top to bottom than it was last year. So they'll be a better team because they're more talented and they're going to be coached better. But if there's still that same flawed team that can't show up every week, then they'll lose the second game. If they beat Texas A&M, it's because they're getting closer to being the team they're capable of. Now in that situation, the 3 teams that I talked about, they'll go at worst 2-1 against them, and I don't see them losing to anybody that's not good. Like, here's the one thing last year showed us. Notre Dame still has to learn to play to play better against teams that are somewhat on their level. Ohio State last year, Duke last year before all their injuries. Because people forget, Duke was beating Florida State in the second half last year before Riley Leonard got hurt. And then that's when Florida State came back and won. That was a really good Duke team before all the injuries. But Ohio State, Duke, Louisville, USC, Clemson were all somewhat on Notre Dame's level to some degree. Notre Dame went to NC State. I'll put them in there as well. Notre Dame went 3-3 against those teams and barely won one of the 3 that they won. They had to come from behind late in the game, score a touchdown, and do all that. And but the reality is the teams that weren't on their level, they destroyed everyone. And they even destroyed two of the teams that were on their level in USC and NC State. When I look at this year's schedule, I see A&M potentially being that team. I see Louisville potentially being one of those teams. I see Florida State being one of those teams, and I see USC being one of those teams. I don't think that there's anyone beyond that. Now, last year, Notre Dame wasn't as talented as I think they're going to be this year. So that's why there's fewer teams, even though I just got done saying this year's a tougher schedule than what last year's was, just looking at the quality of the opponents, not relative to Notre Dame. This Notre Dame team is going to be more talented than they were last year. So I think there's only 4 teams that have the talent to beat them if they have an off day. Whereas last year there was more than that. And so I feel like if they beat A&M, there's only 3 other teams that have the potential to do that. I think they go at least 2-1 against those teams, and then I don't see them losing a game to an inferior opponent the way that they did in 22 and that they've done in past years. So that's why I say beat A&M 11-1 is the floor for me. And so that's why I'm buying. A long-winded way of saying buy, but I wanted to explain why that was the case. Nathan Milton with a buy-seller hold. Devin Ford will work his way to be a starting safety in the NFL. I'm selling that just because, I mean, that's saying a lot. I don't see that happening. I would love to be wrong about that. I love that story. I think that had such a great kid for everything he's done and the team-first attitude he's had. Really like that kid. Really like that kid. Just a reminder for those who joined the show late that today's show will be buy-seller holds that were from the message board. The premium message board is the only place we're getting buy-seller hold questions from today. If you want to do a super chat, we'll get to those at the end. But for the rest of the show, we are just doing buy-seller holds from the message board members at Irish Breakdown. We're not doing them from the chat. Just wanted to, I know some folks jumped in late. Just want to remind those folks that that's what we're doing. So Connor Laws with a buy-seller hold. The starting right tackle for Notre Dame against Texas A&M is neither Baker nor Wagner. I'm selling that. I do think it'll be one of those 2 guys. If it's somebody else, then my answer earlier about Notre Dame being a finalist for the Joe Moore Award is even more emphatic of a buy. Because if it's not one of those 2 guys, it means either Sullivan Absher or Gerby Lambert has a monster fall camp. And if one of those guys has a monster fall camp, then Notre Dame is going to be a lot better on the O-line. Or go back to John A1 scenario from earlier. If Emil Wagner is so good that he moves to left tackle and Charles Jagasaw moves to right tackle, and that's why it won't be Baker nor Wagner, even still, again, I'm way higher on what the offensive line would be at that time than even what I am now. So I'm going to sell it. But if it's not one of those 2 guys, then my optimism about this line is going to skyrocket unless it's coming from some crazy scenario where there's just a bunch of injuries. So, yes, I'm with you on that one, Connor Laws. That's a good question. Peruvian Irish, buy, seller, hold. Rocco Spindler will be the starting left guard by Texas A&M. It better be a buy. I'm buying it, and it needs to be that way. Like, look, here's the deal. Love Pat Coogan. Great kid. He's going to give you everything he got. Ryan made a good point the other day. Really good swing guy. Love to have him as a backup. Love to have him on the team. But if you're trying to win a national championship and you've got talented players like a Rocco Spindler, like a Sullivan Absher, even like a Sam Pendleton, or even Chris Tarek, who I thought played pretty well in the bowl game, and it's a big 330-pounder, you just got to play those guys. You got to coach them up, get them ready, and play them. And with Rocco, it's not like this is a kid that's never played before. He's a senior that's got 10 starts under his belt. He was better than Pat Coogan at stretches last season. When I've said it before, when Rocco's at his best, he's better than Pat Coogan at his best. And I don't think it's close. If Rocco can be more consistent, which he showed in the spring game, and I thought he showed at times the week before in the Jersey scrimmage, then he's a not just a better player, but a much better player. And so if that's the case, then he should start. And again, if Rocco wins the starting job, not handed to it, not Coogan gets hurt, but wins the job, goes out this summer, puts in the work, comes into camp in great shape, focuses on his footwork, focuses on his assignments, and he wins the starting left guard job, then I'm going to feel a lot better about the offensive line than I do now. And I think it's got a chance to be good now, but I still have some concerns and reservations about depending on who starts. And, if Notre Dame's got Tosh Baker and Pat Coogan both starting on the offensive line going against Texas A&M, I'm going to be a little bit more concerned. If at least one of those guys is not starting, I'm going to feel better. If both of those guys aren't starting, I'm going to feel great. And that's not a knock on them. It's just right now, I think there's higher ceiling players. And if those higher ceiling players start tapping into that, I'm going to be excited about what this line can be. Very excited about what this line can be. My guy Jim Haller with a buy, sell, or hold. A Notre Dame player will win the Heisman Trophy in the next 3 years. No salty. It's not how many the great one will win. I love that little jab at our guy Salty Virginia Peanuts. A Notre Dame player will win the Heisman Trophy in the next 3 years. I kind of feel like I almost have to buy it, even though I don't necessarily want to buy it, because I just feel like that. I just feel like super homerish when I say buy. But at the same time, I've also said I think Notre Dame's going to win a national championship in the next 3 years. And if Notre Dame wins a championship, then most likely they've got a quarterback or wide receiver or running back that's going crazy. And most likely that guy's going to then get thrust into the Heisman conversation. So I'm going to buy it, Jim. I'm going to buy it. I'm going to buy that's going to happen. Yeah, I'm going to buy it. So I'm going to buy that one, but I feel kind of weird doing it. All right, let's get back on track. Some more buy, seller, hold. Just a reminder again, I'm only doing buy, seller, holds from the message board, not from the chat. So just a reminder on that. I see some people putting buy, seller, holds in there, and I'm only bringing them from the message board. So just a reminder on that. Irishman 7114 buy, seller, hold. CJ Carr is quarterback number 2 before the end of the season. I'm not only going to buy that, I'm going to emphatically buy that. I think there's a good chance. I probably still would have bought that if you would have said by the beginning of the season. Honestly, I probably would have. I would probably buy that, but I'm definitely buying it for the premise of the end of the season. Absolutely. Puerto Rico ND fan 1. Notre Dame will lose one or more projected starters to this transfer portal window. I'm buying that. Now, again, we're talking about projected starters, guys that we think right now are going to be starters. I'm buying that. I think there's a chance that somebody that leaves the spring as a projected number 1 is going to leave. Now, I think that the reason that, and I have some guys in mind, but the reason that I see those guys leaving, if they do, is because they're getting pushed. Not because they're taking NIL deals or whatever. Just they're getting pushed, and there's a chance that when the season comes, they won't be starter anymore. And yes, Brian, exactly. Projected is a very tricky word. And that's the thing, is like, projected by who? Projected by what part of it? So yeah, absolutely. It's a very tricky word, Brian. So I could see that. I could see one or more. If you'd have said more than one, I might have sold it. But even then, I still might have bought it. We'll see how it goes. I mean, I know Marcus Freeman's having meetings this week with players, and we'll have a lot more clarity on that when those are all done, if they're not already done already. So yeah, I'm gonna buy that one. Rudy was offsides. Steve Angeli never takes another snap at Notre Dame. I'm selling that. I think Steve Angeli will take another snap at Notre Dame. Like, we're in this kind of weird space with Steve Angeli, and there's players like that every year, so it's not abnormal, where it's either one extreme or the other with him. One is he's going to be the guy, he's going to start, he's great, he's the great Steve Angeli. He's becoming the next Ian Book, and a guy that certain Notre Dame fans just think is way better than he actually is. And I don't know why they fall in love with him, but they're just fall in love with him. And then there's the other side of the fan base that takes an opposite view of that. And I think part of it is pushing, and I think part of it is both of these sides are pushing back on each other. But the other side is this notion that Steve Angeli just is terrible and all these things. And I'm not necessarily saying that that's what Rudy was offsides was saying, but it's just that notion. Yes, I think Steve Angeli will take snaps at Notre Dame again. Yes, even if I'm right and CJ Carr beats him out for the number 2 quarterback job in fall camp, I don't see Steve leaving in the middle of the season. And so even if if he stays, he's going to play at some point in time. We saw it this year where number 3 quarterback Kenny Minchie got snaps in games. So he'll take another snap in Notre Dame. He may take another meaningful snap in Notre Dame. I just don't think he's ever going to be the guy. But I think he'll take another snap unless he transfers this offseason, which I have not heard any rumblings at all that Steve Angeli's even thinking about transferring. So I'd be shocked if he doesn't take another a snap at Notre Dame. And I honestly, with the punter situation, I wouldn't be shocked if CJ beat him out at quarterback, that there might be a chance that Steve becomes the holder. Maybe, I don't know. We'll see. I could see something like that. All right, 1993, Jaden Greathouse breaks out in a big way and has a 1,000-yard season. I'm going to sell that. All right, 93, but I think of all the wide receivers that I watched this offseason or this spring, he absolutely has a chance to do it. To the point that I'll say this. We were asked before spring, we did a buy seller hold the last time. It was back in March. We did one. And we were asked questions like this about that. And my answer was, I just don't see a guy getting 1,000 yards. I just think there's too much parity at receiver in a good way. There's too many playmakers. The ball is going to get spread around too much. I don't know if they're going to throw for enough yards to get 1,000-yard guy. I was very skeptical of it. Even though I'm selling this one now, I'm selling it with way less confidence now than I was when we did this before. Because I could absolutely see Jaden Greathouse being that guy. I could absolutely see him. I mean, and I'm just talking regular season too. I mean, if we're talking regular season, Jaden Greathouse, he'd have to average, just let me pull out my old trusty calculator here. He'd have to average 83.3 yards a game to get to 1,000 yards. I could absolutely see that in 12 games. Absolutely could see that. So could I see him getting to 1,000 yards? Yeah, I could. Am I predicting it's going to happen? No, I'm not. And that's why I'm selling. But I'm selling it in a way that I would not at all be shocked if I'm wrong. At all be shocked if I'm wrong. I think he's going to be very, very good this year. Very good. But here's the only thing I don't know. And here's part of where my hesitancy is. I know that the current quarterbacks love throwing to Jaden Greathouse. I don't know where Riley Leonard's going to be because I haven't seen him and Riley Leonard really connect. Because we just haven't seen Riley Leonard this spring. So that's another little caveat that makes me at least have pause about whether or not I'm going to completely flip my prediction that nobody can get to 1,000-yard receiving. And D-Rock Irish said in the chat, he said, let me find great questions today. Well done, Irish folks. Yes, these are very good buy seller holds. I'm very, and this is why I decided to do the whole show about it, because there were just so many. In the future, I'm probably going to take like the top 20 and just answer the top 20 as a segment at the end of a show. But sometimes I may just turn the whole stinking show into it because the questions are so good. But today, and that's what we're doing today. Greg Nielsen with a buy seller hold. Deion Colzie, am I buy selling or holding? Deion Colzie is one of the top 6 receivers and in the rotation for Notre Dame in the fall. I'm buying that. You know what? I'm going to hold it. And I don't love doing holds. And Brian J. Irish, I don't necessarily disagree with the comment you made earlier about holds. But there's just some things that we don't know yet. And so that's why I just need to pump the brakes and look at it from the standpoint of, let me just see how the portal season ends. And I'll say this, and I don't know that Deion Colzie is going to go in the portal. I'm not saying he's going to go in the portal. I'm not doing any of those things. What I am saying is I won't be shocked if someone at receiver jumps in the portal. Will it be Deion or somebody else? I don't know. So please don't take this as me saying I'm predicting Deion Colzie is going to go in the portal. I don't know. I will say this. If Deion Colzie says, okay, I am staying at Notre Dame, I'm going to put in the work, I'm going to come back next season, then there's no doubt in my mind that Deion's in the top 6. I think Deion's one of the 2 to 3 most talented receivers in the roster. When he wants to be, he can be that good. Is he going to be that good? I don't know. We'll see. But that's what I think. I think he can be that good. but I just need to know that he's going to be back. So I'm holding it for now because I want to see how the portal season shakes out, and then I'll have a better answer for you. But I will at least give you this, Greg. If he's on the roster, then I'm buying it. I'm buying it because I look. I know he frustrates me, and the reason Dion frustrates me, it's the coach in me. The reason Dion drives me so nuts is because of how good I think he can be, and the frustration I have that he hasn't gotten there. Some of it's not his fault, some of it is. And so to me, when I look at Dion and I say, man, dude, if you wanted to be great, you could be great, but you got to want it. You got to want it every single day. And I've been saying this about Dion since high school. So the biggest question I had about Dion is, does he understand what it takes to be great, and is he willing to work at it? And if that light goes on because I had the same question about Miles Boykin, and the light went on for Miles going into his senior year. The difference is Miles broke out the spring of his senior year and Dion didn't. If Dion wakes up tomorrow and is like, you know what, my number one priority from now until the end of next January, February, whenever the national championship game is to do everything I can do to become the best receiver I can be. Not only do I think Dion can be one of the top 6, not only do I think Dion could be a starter, I think Dion could be a difference maker and arguably their best receiver. If he truly committed himself to being that every single day, I think he could be that good. I absolutely do. And if he comes back next year, that leads me to believe that there's at least a good chance that he has made that decision to some degree. And we'll see if he does. Next question, I believe, is actually from Loco5, not Nathan Milton. So that's my fault for getting that incorrect. And his buy, sell, or hold. Kahanu Kia will be a key rotation player in 24 and a starter in 2025. I'm selling that. I think Kahanu Kia absolutely has a chance to be a rotation player in 2024. I just think he's also just going to be a rotation player in 2025 as well. If the starting linebacking core this year is Drake Bowen and Jack Kaiser, when Jack Kaiser leaves, I think the replacement for him is either Kingston Villamasa or Jaden Alsbury or Jalen Sneed, not Kahanu. And it's in that order is my prediction. It's in that order. So no, I don't think Kahanu will be a starter in 2025. I think he'll absolutely be a rotation player in 24 and 25 and a great special teams player in 24 and 25. He has been that impressive. And here's the thing about Kahanu. It wasn't just a blue gold game. And you guys know my stance on this. If we're watching Kahanu and he doesn't do anything, and all of a sudden a guy comes out and has a great spring game, don't care. We see that all the time. Nate Montana won a spring game MVP. Junior Jabby won a spring game MVP. The thing that had me sold on Kahanu is he looked good the week before in the Jersey scrimmage as well. And that had a lot more at stake. So it's not just a guy that had a good day in spring. This kid's had a very good spring from what we could see. Very good spring. Domer Grizz with a buy, sell, or hold. After it all plays out, you will be highly satisfied with the 2025 receiver class, meaning add 1 to 2 more dudes. I'm going to give the answer to this, and I'm going to leave y'all hanging with a bit of a tease, and you're going to be mad at me, but that's kind of part of the fun. I get to have that fun sometimes. And that is going to come. This is my answer to that. I'm buying that. I'm buying that when it's all said and done, after it all shakes out and a lot of different things are going to happen, I'm going to look back at this receiving class and be very pleased with it. And I'll just leave it at that. And we'll just see how it all plays out. See how it all plays out. Buy, sell, or hold. JG Town. Buy, sell, or hold that Notre Dame will have the young linebackers start by the later part of the year. I assume you're referring to Drake Bowen, Jaden Alsbury, and Kingston. I'm going to sell that because I don't think Jack Kaiser is going to lose a starting job unless he gets injured. So I'm going to sell that. Do I think all the young linebackers are going to yes, I fully believe we're going to see a lot of Drake Bowen, a lot of Jaden Alsbury, a lot of Kingston Villamasa this year. I think we're going to see a lot of those guys. Do I think they're all going to be starting? No, I don't. No, I don't. I don't. Indy Forever 76, buy, sell, or hold. Notre Dame will have a consensus All-American on each side of the ball by year's end. I'm gonna buy that. They had that last year. They had two. Actually, in matter of fact, last year they had consensus. They had unanimous All-Americans last year in Joe Alt on offense, and then Xavier Watts on defense. So consensus, absolutely. I think Howard Cross has a chance to be a consensus All-American. I think Riley Mills could have a chance to become that guy. I think Benjamin Morrison, if he's healthy all year, could be that guy. Obviously, Xavier Watts can be that guy. Offensively, defensively, I don't think that's an issue. They could have multiples. Offensively, there's a lot more, okay, guys have to prove it. But between Riley Leonard, Jeremiah Love, or Jadarian Price, if one of them becomes the guy, between Charles Jagasaw, Billy Schrouth, Ashton Craig, Mitchell Evans, Jaden Greathouse, I think one of those guys emerges as a consensus All-American. I do. If the answer to this is if my buy is wrong, then it'll be because of the offensive side of the ball. I could see a scenario where there's not an offensive guy, but I think somebody will. I certainly think we'll see somebody emerge as a consensus All-American because I like that you said it the way you did, because if you could have just said Notre Dame will have an All-American on each side of the ball, oh sure, they'll have the second or third team All-American. Consensus All-American means, I believe, you have to be first team on, I believe, 3 of the 5 All-American squads. It's either 2 or 3 of the 5 All-American squads. That means you're pretty darn good. So I could see that. I could definitely see that, and I'm buying that one. It's not as easy as just being an All-American, but I'm buying that one because I just feel like somebody's breaking out this year on offense, whether it's an offensive lineman, whether it's a running back, whether it's a tight end, receiver, quarterback, somebody's going to break out this year. I'm just not sure who it's going to be. By CR Lewis 80, buy, sell, or hold. Notre Dame will have more NFL draft picks in 25 than 24. Real quick, Joe, see you later, man. Have a good one. Thanks for being with us. Buy, sell, or hold. Joe Allen's leaving, by the way. I didn't kick him out. If you're listening via podcast. CR Lewis 80. Well, Notre Dame will have more NFL draft picks in 2025 than 24. So let's set the couple things. Let's say, so right now there's 8 guys that are on the verge of getting drafted tonight. You've got Joe Alt, Blake Fisher, Sam Hartman, and Audric Estime on offense. Defensively, you've got Javonte Jean-Baptiste, Maris Leofau, J.D. Bertrand, and Cam Hart, right? Then maybe like a Thomas Harper sneaks in. But right now, I've only seen those 8 guys get projected to get picked by somebody. Let's say 7 of the 8 get picked. Just to, okay, it doesn't go perfect for Notre Dame. Let's just say 7 of the 8 get picked. I could see scenario where only 6 of the 8 get picked, but let's just say 7 does. Next year, could Notre Dame get more? So next year, if Riley Leonard's healthy, he'll get picked. If one of the transfer receivers will have a shot to get drafted, whether it's Chris Mitchell or Bo Collins, if not both, but let's just say one. No offensive lineman. I think Howard Cross and Riley Mills both get drafted next year. I think Jack Kaiser gets drafted next year. That's 5. I think Benjamin Morrison gets drafted next year. I think Xavier Watts gets drafted next year. So that's 7. So that's the ones I'm confident that those 7 get picked. Now there's say Jadarian Price breaks out and rushes for 1,300 yards. He could be that guy. Let's say RJ Oben has a Javonte Jean-Baptiste type season. He could certainly get drafted. I mean, and he may already be there. And let's say, I could see that. I could see Jordan Patel having a breakout year and him maybe getting drafted. I could see Rod Hurd having a really good year and testing well and him getting drafted. So between the 7 I'm confident in, and Mitchell Evans could also be part of that. So the 7 that I'm confident in, Riley Leonard, one of the 2 wide receivers, Riley Mills, Howard Cross, Jack Kaiser, Benjamin Morrison, Xavier Watts. If 6 of those 7 get picked, because let's say something could happen, somebody comes back, somebody gets hurt, whatever. 6 of those guys get drafted. Then there's the chance that Mitchell Evans leaves, and if he leaves, he gets drafted. The second of the transfer receivers that could get in, RJ Oben, Jordan Patelho, Rod Hurd. Yeah, I think next year's draft class is going to be bigger. When I talk through it, CR Lewis, it becomes kind of clear that between the guys that I'm confident get drafted and then other potential players going and getting drafted, eh, I'd be very shocked if next year's draft class isn't bigger than this year's draft class. Yeah. Rhino, 1134, buy, sell, or hold. Kingston Viliama-Asa will end up with more snaps than Drake Bowen for the 2024 season. Assuming Drake is healthy, I'm selling that. I think Drake's going to be a starter for this year. If Kingston starts this year and Drake is healthy, it's more likely that they start together than Kingston beats out Drake. I think it would be more of that. So, no, if they're both healthy, I think Drake will have more snaps this year. I do. What's interesting, though, is, you could see a scenario where, Kingston's kind of that ultimate swing guy, kind of like Tavon Coney was in 2016? And Tavon led the team in tackles, I believe, and tackles for loss, but he didn't start most of the season because he was just that next man in type of guy. So I could see something like that, but I think Drake will have more snaps this season. I'm buying that. I'm selling that. Brock at AB, both Jadarian Price and Jeremiah Love both have over 1,200 yards of offense this year. Now that's an interesting one. Oh, I'm going to sell that one barely because I do think I could see both of them ended up with less than 1,200 yards because of the fact that they're going to split, but then also with Riley Leonard and what he'll do rushing wise. I'm buying them both being over 1,000. I'm going to sell with if I was doing these buy, sell, and holds with a confidence meter, like 1 to 5, 5 being the most confident, I'm selling it, but I'm selling it with a confidence of 2. And I probably shouldn't have done that because then you guys are going to ask me to do that for all of them. That's going to take even longer. But I'm selling it with low confidence. Kelly's dance instructor. Notre Dame will have a top 3 recruiting class in 2025 for any service. I'm selling that. I'm selling that, and I'm not even selling it because of the reasons I've talked about in the past, where, that Notre Dame guys don't get, evaluated correctly. They get dropped because people don't treat them right, and there's this bias and all these other reasons. I just don't think this is going to be a top 3 class. I don't see how the offensive class ends up top 5. Deuce is a stud. The receiving core, again, I think it's going to end up being better. I'm going to be happy with it, but I don't know that it's going to have any top 25 players in it. James Flanagan's pretty good. Offensive line class is pretty good. D-line class is going to be solid, like Christopher Burgess, like Joseph Reif, like Davion Dixon, but I think they're going to come up short in numbers. The linebacker class, I think, will have a chance to be very good. You'll have Anthony Sack will be ranked high. You'll have I think they'll get one more guy to be ranked high. I think the DB class has a chance to be truly elite, but the running back position, the receiver position not being elite, but being I'm satisfied, but not elite. The lack of numbers in the offensive line, the defensive line questions. There's just enough questions there to make me think it's not going to be top 3. Do I think it has a chance to be very, very good? Yes, I do. I think as a whole, this offensive class, or this team has a chance to be a top 5 class. Do I think that there's a chance that I could even rank it top 3? No. Do I think there's a chance that any recruiting service will rank it top 3? Absolutely not. And also partly because there's some guys in the class that I don't think that are going to be ranked appropriately. And that's going to be part of it too. So no, I'm selling that one. I do think it's going to be a very good class, but I still right now have too many questions to really say, yeah, it could finish in that regard. Irish and Clemson's backyard. Notre Dame will buy, sell, or hold. Notre Dame will win all their big games, A&M, Florida State, Louisville, during the regular season this year, but will drop a game to a lesser opponent, and we will scratch our heads as to why. That is a good one. I'm going to sell, but I'm not going to sell with great confidence because I could actually see this situation happening. I could see a scenario where Notre Dame beats all those 3 teams and then stubs their toe at Georgia Tech. We've seen that happen to really good teams before. I mean, Clemson's championship team in 2016, team that went to the playoff, and beat Ohio State 31-0, and they went and beat Bama in the title game in November, lost at home to a Pitt team that finished that year, I believe, 7-7 or 8-5. Excuse me, 8-5. I could absolutely see that. Absolutely could see that. I'm gonna sell it though. And the reason I'm going to sell it though is because I actually think that Notre Dame will have a chance to lose one of those 3 games or to Louisville. Because well, you know what? I'm gonna change my mind. I'm actually gonna buy it because you left Louisville off your list. Or no, I'm not gonna buy it because I'm thinking through this. Oh boy. Um, I'm gonna sell it because I think if Notre Dame loses, they'll lose to A&M or USC. I think they'll lose to one of those 2 or Florida State. I think that's one of 3 they lose. I don't see them losing at home to Louisville. I really don't. But honestly, at the end of the day, here's the problem with this. I kind of feel like Notre Dame's going to lose a game because I'm 11-1 in my prediction, but I can't tell you who they're going to lose to because I can say they could lose to A&M, and then I'm like, no, they're not going to lose to A&M, and I can give you 20 reasons why they're not going to lose to A&M. They're not going to lose to Louisville, and I give you 50 reasons why they're not going to lose to Louisville. They're not going to lose to Florida State. And I'll give you 50 reasons why they're not going to lose to Florida State. And same with USC. But going undefeated is very hard. And it's hard when you play a challenging schedule. And I think this is going to be a challenging schedule. So I'm selling just because I can't think of any team that's not one of those 3 that I can see Notre Dame losing to. And the way that they played last year against those teams, well, that would be tough for me. That would be tough for me. PA Irish Guy 23, Jordan Patel has a breakout and has 10-plus sacks in the season. I'm selling that for the reasons I discussed earlier. Even if Jordan Patel has a breakout and plays great this year, I still don't see him having 10-plus sacks this year. Is it possible? Sure, it's possible. He's got the talent to do it, but I don't see it because I think the sacks are going to be spread around. I pointed this out earlier. Penn State led the nation last year with 49 sacks, number 1 in the country in total sacks. They didn't have a single guy with 10 sacks. Their leading sack guy had 7. So I don't see that one. Jim Halloran, buy-seller hold. Notre Dame does not make the playoff in 2024. I'm selling that, Jim. I do think Notre Dame's going to be a playoff team in 2024. I think they've got the depth. They've got the talent. The coaching is improved. The speed is improved. The depth is improved. The schedule is set up nicely for them in that they've got what I would argue the best team they're going to play all year at home. And they play one of the most talented teams they're going to play. They get early with a new staff. I think that works out well for them. They can sustain injuries better than they had in the past. And the fact is that the playoff is 12 teams this year. I just think this Notre Dame team is going to absolutely be a top 10 team. And if they're a top 10 team, they're definitely in the playoff. So I'm selling that. I think this Notre Dame team is going to be in the playoff. I absolutely do. Irish Cheesehead has a couple. First one, buy, sell, or hold. Billy Schrouth is the next Notre Dame lineman picked in the first round. I'm going to sell that because I don't see a lot of pure guards going around 1. You might have 1 or 2 a year, maybe. But I think he's got a shot at it. I'm kind of with him, honestly. My sell is also partly because of I just need to see it. I just need to see it. And could he be that guy? Sure. But I need to see it. Does he have the talent to be a first-round pick? Yeah. Last year there was one projected guard in the first round picked, and that's Peter Skoronski, who played tackle in college. The year before there were 3. The year before that there was 2. And both of them played tackle in college. These are guys that are listed as guards on draft history, but one of those guys is currently playing left tackle, Rashawn Slater. So there's only 1 guard taken in the first round, and he played tackle in college. None the next year. There's 1 the next year, 2 the next year, but one of those guys, Isaiah Wynn, has played tackle in the NFL and is projected and played tackle in college. So there was only really 1 that year. None the next year, 2 the year before that. 1 of them played tackle in college. 3 the year before that. 2 of them played tackle in college. So there just aren't a lot of pure guards that get taken in the first round. Does Billy have the tools to do it? Sure. I just need to see it first. Just need to see it first. Benjamin, and the second one from Irish Cheesehead, buy, sell, or hold. Benjamin Morrison starts at Texas A&M. I'm holding on that one. I just don't know enough about the severity of his injury to know if he's going to be healthy enough to be there for that game. I'm holding on that one. I just don't know. I haven't heard anything one way or the other from Notre Dame. They just said he's going to be back in the fall. They didn't say for fall camp, beginning of the season. So I really don't know. And shoulders can be tricky. So I'm holding on that one. Buy, sell, or hold from Army 72. The O-line starters, as known now, will be the starters against Texas A&M. And for that one, Army 72, I am going to hold. I'm holding because right now, the projected starters are left to right, Charles Jagasaw, Pat Coogan, Ashton Craig, Billy Schrouth, Tosh Baker. I think at least one of those guys gets beat out by the time we get to fall camp. So, yes, I'm going to sell that. I'm going to sell that because I don't think the O-line that is known now will be the starters. And Andrew, I heard that he said that on the sideline interview, but he's not going to say anything otherwise. Number one, he's not the doctor. He's not the team doctor, number one. Number two, he can't know that. Number three, Notre Dame kids are very well schooled on what to say when asked those questions. He's not going to say, I'm not going to be back till week 4, even if he knew he was going to be back in week 4, because that's just not how Notre Dame kids operate, nor should they. So I just don't put a lot of stock in that. I will say this, I hope he's back by then, because they're going to need him back to truly be the elite defense they're capable of. But back to the question on hand, and I just wanted to say that, Andrew, I did hear that. Army 72, I'm selling that. I think one of the starters will get beat out. If not, I'll say this too, Army 72, I think there's a better chance that both of the guys I mentioned get beat out than neither of them do. So that's another aspect of it. Stephen B., buy, sell, or hold. Jadarian Price leads the offense in rushing yards, but Jeremiah Love leads the team in yards from scrimmage. We had that one earlier as well, and I'm buying that. I'm buying that. Played like a champion. It's got several here. By game 1, Notre Dame's wide receiver room will stay intact with no one leaving via the portal or medical retirement. I'm going to sell that. I think there's just too many kids. I don't know who's leaving. I haven't been told for certain that a guy is going to leave. I just look at the way that some of the young receivers played, and I have a hard time with either A, veterans saying, yep, I'm going to play behind that, or B, the young players saying, I'm not sitting for another year when I think that I can play. So I think we'll see a guy leave and not be on the roster next year. So I'm selling that. It's got 3 more rapid fire ones. Buy, sell, or hold. Jaden Harrison is in the top 6 receivers by game 1. I'm selling that. I think by game 1, it'll be Chris Mitchell. I'm just going kind of Z to X. I think it's going to be Chris Mitchell, Jaden Harris, or Jaden Greathouse. And then, let's say the spring ended, you had Micah Gilbert there. I think Bo Collins will be there. You'll have Jordan Faison there. So those 5. And then at least one of Jaden Thomas and Deion Coles. I think one of those guys is going to stay. I hope they both stay. And I don't have any evidence that they will or won't leave. We're just trying to talk practically here for the sake of argument. I think at least one of them stays, and if one of them stays and is healthy, they'll be in the mix. And then you've got guys like, if they both stay, that makes it even harder. So, and then KK Smith is the next one. So I'm not talking about him yet because I'll get into that. Buy, sell, or hold. KK Smith is in the top 6 by game 1. I'm actually going to buy that because I really liked what I saw from KK Smith this spring. But I'm not buying with great confidence because I could see the light going on for Cam Hart in fall camp, and he's just too good not to put on the field. But I really think KK Smith has a chance to be a good football player at Notre Dame. And I'm going to buy that. He's going to be there. And then the final one, buy, sell, or hold. Chris Mitchell's in the top 6 by game 1. I'm buying that, and barring injury, my confidence is a 5 out of 5. I mean, yes, that absolutely is going to happen. All right. Slant, burst, stick, post. Notre Dame, buy, sell, or hold. Notre Dame having 4 scholarship quarterbacks on the roster in the fall is a bad thing for the 2025 season. His premise being, this would limit reps for CJ and Kenny in a prep for a big quarterback battle next year. I disagree with that. I disagree with that. And the reason I disagree with that is because you're assuming something that's not part of your question. You're assuming that if there's 4 quarterbacks on the roster, then that guarantees that CJ and Kenny will be 3rd and 4th. And I don't accept that premise. I don't. I think if there's 4 scholarship quarterbacks on the roster and one of those 2 guys is good enough to be the starter the next year, then I do believe they will push Steve Angeli out at number 2. And then that guy will have the reps. So I don't think so. And look, there's still plenty of rep opportunities in practice and scout team and all types of situations to get the work. And then of course you come into fall camp. They're only going to have 3 of them in the spring. You may, I think Deuce might have a shot to be an early enrollee. I don't say yes because I don't know, but if Deuce is an early enrollee, you'll have 4, and there's again plenty of reps to go around for those guys. So I don't necessarily believe that having 4 is bad for the roster. If anything, having 4 amps up the competition even more, and that's going to make them better. So that's where I'm selling that one. And here's the last 2 buy, seller holds of the day. This one is from Karen the Maven. Buy, seller hold. Notre Dame does the unprecedented and radical and uses a rotation of quarterbacks for the 2024 season. I think there's a little sarcasm there because you and I both know that that's not unprecedented. And it's not even unprecedented at Notre Dame, which we saw that in 2021. But no, I don't think they're going to use a rotation of quarterback. I don't think there's the skill set, in my opinion, for Notre Dame to use that. I think to do that, you're going to have a Tyler Buckner type of guy that's just a different skill set. In this instance, the guy with the different skill set is Riley Leonard, who's your starter. And so there's just no need to have that kind of thing. So I'm going to sell that. And then Poe Welch, 84, buy, sell, or hold. More than one Notre Dame linebacker will get drafted in the 2024 draft. I hope that I'm wrong on this one, but I'm selling that. And the reason I'm selling that is because I'm concerned about JD Bertrand getting drafted tonight or this weekend because of the injuries. Like I would have guessed that JD would have got picked, but the problem is he had the injuries that he missed the combine, he missed pro day. There's not official times on him, and I'm just concerned that with his size, that's going to hurt him. That I think that's going to hurt him. So I definitely not a day one guy. So by the way, somebody asked, the draft starts tonight. No, it's tomorrow. If I said tonight, there's a misspoke. If I said it, I don't remember saying it, but it's tomorrow night. Day 2 is rounds 2 and 3 on Friday, and then day 3 is Saturday, rounds 4 to 7. I'm just gonna. And by the way, JD Bertrand is not slow. I still can't believe there's actually Notre Dame fans that are still saying that. Like he's not slow. He would have ran a 4.6 most likely, if not better, if he'd have had a chance to test. He's not slow. He's short and has short arms. Yes. And he's missed this entire offseason because of injuries. That's a problem. So I don't think he's going to get drafted this weekend. And that's just my opinion. I'm not a draft expert. I hope I'm dead wrong. I absolutely love that kid. Great kid. But I just don't think he's going to get drafted this weekend. So I think it's only going to be one Notre Dame linebacker. But I'm hoping that I'm correct. I'm incorrect on that one. So I don't mind being wrong about predictions and all the same things, but I definitely like being wrong at times. In an instance like this, I really hope I'm wrong. I would love to see JD Bertrand get his name called. Now, I've heard people make the argument that it's kind of sometimes better to not get drafted at all than to get picked in the 7th round, because then if you're undrafted, you can kind of negotiate to what team you want to go play for. We'll see. But I hope I would like, but it's also at the flip side. The reason I hope he gets drafted is because it's still that cool moment that so few people get to have. Think about it. Of all the kids that played college football last year, Division I, 1AA, D2, and D3, tens of thousands of kids played college football last year. Of that group, only 250 something are going to get drafted. That's a pretty special moment. And so I would love for him to experience that. It just, if my prediction is that he won't. But I really, really, really want to be wrong on that. Really want to be wrong on that for JD's sake. So anyway, that's going to do it, everybody. That was a lot of fun. I hope you guys had as much fun as I did doing this show. A couple little glitches here and there, which we'll make sure I'll do my best to get worked out next time when we do this segment. But this is going to be the Wednesday segment moving forward. In the future, the buy, sell, or hold will be more so a shorter segment with fewer questions. I'm going to probably limit it to like 20. So I'll pick like the best 20. So it'll be from message board, premium members on the message board at boards@irishbreakdown.com. And so it'll be more, hey, get your questions in. They better be good because I'm only taking the top 20 for the segment. And then we'll talk about other segments before. But occasionally, as we go through the summer, especially when I'm with Vince, there may be some times where we have so many good questions that we just decide to do the whole show on buy, sell, or holds. And I think also you guys did a great job this time of a little bit of a better feel for what buy, sell, or hold is. It's not like last time. There's a lot of kind of like mailbaggish type of questions that were just genuine questions. This time there was a lot more of set a premise. This is going to happen. Buy, sell, or hold that happening. I thought you guys did a great job with it. Tons of fun, lots of great questions, and enjoyed the chat for the most part. There's a little brief period where there was the Michigan stuff going on, but I'm kind of giving you guys a hard time. Great chat going on. Loved seeing your guys' responses to a lot of these. It was a whole lot of fun. Tonight, IB Nation Sports Talk, 6 o'clock tonight. Sean Stiers and the boys will be there tonight. Tomorrow, 2 o'clock, Ryan and I will go live to preview the NFL draft. Probably have some other Notre Dame topics that we'll discuss. Friday, we'll have a Notre Dame recruiting hour. It will be Ryan and Sean on Saturday or on Friday. And then we will have some post-draft stuff. Ryan and I are working on doing some post-draft stuff with some of the guys as well. So be tuned in. And that's why after you hit the like button, you need to make sure you've hit the notification bell and that you share this podcast. But the notification bell will alert you when we decide to go live or when we've published new content. So you definitely want to check that out as well. And if you haven't seen it, get on the boards at boards@irishbreakdown.com. Tonight, at some point in time, I'm getting ready to go make dinner here for Angela and I here a little bit. Going to make some steaks tonight, by the way. I'm very excited about that. But after I'm done with that, I'm going to get back to breaking down the gold team offensive line. I've got the grades all done. The breakdown is all done. Now I just got to put it into written form and put it on the board. It'll be premium members only. Complete play-by-play grades of the gold team offensive line. So you definitely want to check that out. And that is for premium members only. So have an awesome rest of your day. I'll see you guys again very soon on the Irish Breakdown Podcast.